Hello again, friends! And you are our friends even on a new day. And this, of course, the new day that the Drive Thru comes out Tuesdays now, as per the leader of the cult of Cornette. But here on the Drive Thru, we answer your questions, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru, or via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and of course, the star of this here Drive Thru, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Yeah, let me get one thing straight with you, great Brian Last. You just put in that opening, you just put off on me like it was some shameful thing, like a scarlet letter that I would have to wear on my forehead that the new day of the Drive-Thru is coming out on Tuesday. When you indeed were fully on board with that, and even, as a matter of fact, I remember a few months ago, floated that idea to give us more time to properly eviscerate some of these Sunday events. Like it wasn't no big deal then, but suddenly when I am responsible for this, like you expect the cult of Cornette members to blame me when it's just another day. It's just another day. It's not like we're shorting them programming, because this way we're separating the programming, because the new experience drop day, as they say in the business that we're in here, is now on Saturday. So we want to separate these things out so people don't get an overdose of me, too much of Jim Cornette in their bloodstream. It could be too much of a euphorical high. So we're trying to keep you just on your microdosing here. That's all we're doing. Don't try to accuse me of perpetrating falderall shenanigans and tomfoolery.
Okay, well, we're microdosing here on the Drive-Thru this week, and the colors are glorious.
We ain't microdosing on the weather. Now, what was it, last week? It's been so long. The time moves so quickly now with all these breaking events and things we got going on. But last week, they told you were going to get 12 to 14 inches of snow and you got 3 feet.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Well, now, earlier this week here in the greater metropolitan Louisville, Kentucky area, we had an ice storm, and everything has been frozen since then because it hadn't been above freezing in a week now. And it's just changed shape over the time. Some of it's off of the trees. Some of them are still bent over. But my driveway, actually part of the downhill part, and it's exposed to what sun there was, and it managed, with the wind and everything, managed to dry off. But the top of it, the flat part, thankfully, melted and refroze, and it looks like a skating rink. And poor Harley, we mentioned, we opened up the experience this past week talking about the various shit habits that our dogs have. Little Swami up there and my little Harley Quinn. And we figured, why not, since dog shitting habits are more entertaining than most current wrestling, so we'll follow up on that. Harley it's been a source of consternation to the poor thing. She likes to shit outside, as dogs do, right? But she can't walk on the grass where she usually sits and shits, actually. She sits and shits in the grass. Not in the same place, obviously. But it's like little needles because it's all frozen, stiff. And it was so hard yesterday when I was walking on it, I couldn't even break them. And she likes to shit in the grass. She doesn't like to shit on the pavement because, after all, we can't live like savages. But now that's frozen completely over, and she couldn't keep her footing. So we've had to use the inside indoor auxiliary puppy pad location for this bad weather. But overnight, last night, we got the harbinger of things to come. We got like an inch of snow, which covered the glaze over the driveway. And she insists on going outside. Every day she can't realize it looks the same out the window. Why doesn't she realize it's the same? So today, she's all says she wants to go outside. I said, all right, you're going to see. When I lift the garage door, she sees that big expanse of white driveway, not the ice that she had seen before, but this beautiful snow. And she loves to run and romp in the snow and dig her nose in the snow. And she looks like Pacino and Scarface coming out of the fucking deal. And so she immediately runs out, and right in the driveway, she pees because she's got to pee. And as soon as she takes one step to kick a foot back, like, you know, when they start to kick to cover it up, right? She kicks the 1 foot back and all of her feet fly out from under her, and she belly flops in the snow because the ice is still under there and she didn't know it. And then she can't get on the grass. She has to stay on the walk in the driveway, but it's slick there, and she came back in the house. But that's the funny, the poop slip or the pee slip was the funniest thing that I've seen. But this brings to mind, we're about to get, according to what they say here, anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of snow. If they told you 12 to 14 and you got 3 feet, does that mean that we're about to get 2.5 feet of snow? I'm worried about this.
Probably not, because you're in Louisville, Kentucky, not the Northeast.
It snowed at the Alamo. It snowed in San Antonio, Texas. Dallas is going to get 6 inches of snow. So we've completely fucked up the environment, but all these things, who knows what's going to happen? I was in Dallas, Texas one time when they had 6 inches of snow, and it is not a normal thing that happens. This was 36 years ago, and they freaked the fuck out. Not only that, but nobody's going to drive anywhere. Nobody is going to be, it's Armageddon. It's the end of the world. 6 inches of snow in Dallas is the same thing as fucking forest fires at the Antarctic. It does not compute with those people. I predict trouble. Did we ever do a deep dive on when we transitioned, me and the Midnight Express, from Mid-South Wrestling to Dallas? I can't remember whether that specific December, January, after we finished the in-between part.
We may have. I'm not certain. I could check right now, but I think we may have.
The point, it was a fucking rib on me, because it was like that Christmas of 1984 was one of the 2 most miserable weeks of my life, all in all. Because we were moving from Mid-South and from Alexandria, Louisiana, and moving to Dallas because we were going to World Class. And we've told the story before. Originally, we were going to go to work for Crockett then, and had already planned to move to Charlotte. And Watts intervened and twisted our arm to go to Texas and blah, blah, blah. But I looked up the schedule for when the last time I was in Dallas, Texas in a snowstorm and what had happened right before it. We actually had a few days off in Mid-South, which was unusual. We were packing all our shit up. And then we've got to finish Mid-South and start Dallas in the same weekend. And then we get a Christmas break, and then we're starting full time. So on December the 14th, 1984, I'll make this quick and get to the point. We do the scaffold match with the Rock and Roll Express in Greenville, Mississippi. These were the last few Mid-South towns. And then Little Rock, Arkansas, scaffold match the next day. So we did a 500-mile round trip on Friday in the scaffold match. And then Saturday, we go to Little Rock, which was a 5-6 hour drive, and I'll leave my car at the airport. We do the scaffold match that night, and I fly because Louisville is closest to Little Rock, and that's where I'm going eventually. I have to fly the next day on Sunday the 16th all the way to Lafayette, Louisiana, as far south as you can go. We do another scaffold match. And then, I flew to Baton Rouge and drove to Lafayette. You can't actually fly to Lafayette. So I flew from Little Rock to Baton Rouge, drove to Lafayette, did the match, went back to Baton Rouge. The next day, flew to Dallas because we had to do the Fort Worth TV for World Class. Did that TV that night. The next day, flew back to Little Rock, picked up my car at the parking lot, drove to Nashville, stayed over that night, and all the way back to Louisville the next day. So I got home on December 19th about noon. And I'm thinking, the first time I've got 11 days off in over a year, 2 years at least, in a row. And I'm home for Christmas, right? All I've got to do is make Reunion Arena Christmas night in Dallas, and I'm off until I leave for Texas on the 30th of December. because of that schedule I just told you. I'm worn out, run down. I get a cold 2 days later, and I spend 3 days at home sick in bed before Christmas. Christmas Day, I've got a fever of 102. I don't know how much disease I spread, by the way, on my way to Dallas, because I had to fly to Dallas and do the show at Reunion Arena. It's Christmas night against the Fantastics, midnight, American Tag Team title match. Reunion Arena sold out, right? So I fly from Louisville to Dallas with a 102-degree fever and who knows what the fuck I was sick with. Do the show that night. That's the one, Brian, you've seen that match. It was on World Class TV, and it's the one where we've just got there. I throw the temper tantrum after the Fantastics get a quick pin, boom, and slide out, and I throw a temper tantrum in the middle of the ring. And it's been out there. It's on I assume on the network, but it's been out there on YouTube. I've seen it over the ensuing years. I'm ready to have a brain aneurysm. I'm throwing that goddamn tantrum with a 102-degree fever. I'm about to pass out anyway. I'm sweating like a whore in church. I'm fucking sick. And then the next day I fly back home and I spend 2 more days in bed and end up driving back to Dallas leaving on the 30th, getting there on the 31st, because we're in Fort Worth for the Monday night TV taping at the Will Rogers Coliseum on New Year's Eve. And I'm just starting to feel better. I did have to stop once on the way down there right in Texarkana and throw up on the side of the road. I'm not sure whether Texarkana had anything to do with it or not. But I figure, fuck it. We're off New Year's Day. Me and Bobby and Dennis all have got rooms at a La Quinta right off the interstate in Irving, Texas, with a Denny's in the parking lot. That's where we're going to live while we're apartment hunting. So I'm just going to go to bed and sleep until I wake up and then go to Denny's and get something to fucking eat. And we have a couple of days off, and then we start full time. I'll feel better. I wake up about 1 o'clock the next fucking day, right? And my drapes are all closed, and I'm in the backside of the La Quinta. But I thought, boy, that sun's awful bright. It's shining through the curtains. I opened my fucking door, and there was 6 inches of snow in the parking lot. It was suddenly like 30 fucking degrees. From the time that I had got back from the Coliseum show at 11 o'clock the previous night until 1 o'clock that afternoon, it had snowed 6 inches in Dallas, Texas. And the whole city had shut down. Thankfully, not Denny's. But I was watching the news, and it didn't register at the time how unheard of that was, because from Louisville, I'm used to, 6 inches of snow. That happens. Those people weren't prepared. They're just trying to go across the interstate to the fucking 7-Eleven to get drinks. I'm seeing people off the side of the fucking ramp, off the side of the road, off in the parking lot. They can't get out. They have no idea how. They just floor it and hope for the best. So
when Dennis did the first Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl, we ended up having a good time.
Dennis Coralluzzo,
Dennis Coralluzzo,
not Condry, who I just referred to.
That's right, Dennis
multiple
Coralluzzo.
Dennises for those of you trying to keep track.
In 1996, but there was a snowstorm the night before, and everyone that was in the hotel, we were stuck. I mean, it was so much snow. We didn't know how they were going to do the brunch the next day at the racetrack, let alone the show, but everything ended up working out. But it makes me wonder, between this story and the Dallas story, although that's only snow in Dallas, it's not real snow. What is the most amount of snow you've seen on the road where it messed things up and you were caught in the middle of it? What's the biggest snowstorm you've experienced?
Okay, well, a couple of answers to that question. The most snow I've ever seen in one place has to be in 1996. I'm sorry, let me change that year. 1999 is when it was. There was a Monday Night Raw taping in Seattle, and then also in, oh my God, what is one of the only other cities in Washington that is due east of Seattle? Could it be Tacoma? Not Tacoma, that's together. Is it, oh God damn it. Bail me out, great geography Brian Last. Give me any other city in Washington State.
Bellingham.
Oh, fuck. There is a city, which I'm sure you can find if you'd apply yourself, that's directly east of Seattle in Washington State. And that's where the taping was the following day. And besides the fact that I had already made plans to go after the Raw taping, since we were on West Coast time, we were done at like fucking 7 o'clock or whatever it was. I was going to go to the next town, but also I heard there was a big snowstorm going to come through again. It had already snowed out in that direction. And so driving from Seattle to this other town, there were like 7-8 feet of snow on the sides of the interstate piled up. And when you would get off at exits, I mean, they know how to do it there because they get all that snow, but there was literally like in untreated areas, 7 or 8 feet of snow on the ground on this drive that I made. It was insane. Did you find that town by now?
Spokane.
Spokane. There you go. That was a lot of snow, but as far as actively coming down and fucking up shows, we in Smoky Mountain one year, I think it was either early 93 or early 94. No, early 94 may have been ice, early 93. Point is, East Tennessee got like 2.5 feet of snow, and up in around Beckley, West Virginia, they got 36 inches, and that's very uncommon, all in those places. And we had to cancel Beckley, but I'd actually been in Morristown, where I lived the night before at a show, and they were calling for bad weather. We were just finished with the show, and I'm thinking, okay, I've only got, I think I lived 7-8 miles, I guess it was, from the high school where we ran. But geez, the ice and the sleet and the snow was starting to come down, and it took me a while to get home. And then I realized, oh, shit, I haven't planned ahead. I've got shit in the garage. I can't get the car in. Fuck it, this shit's coming down, and that's the sleet pellets and everything. I got to carry some more shit. So I'm rushing back and forth. I make a couple of trips. Leave the car door open accidentally. When I go in last time, the door's still, you've done that before, right? Though the door's still standing open and you forgot.
Never have.
You've never done that? Well, fuck you then. Because the next morning I get up late again, and I'm going to call Sandy Scott because I figure we're going to have to cancel Beckley. It's up in the mountains. They're having the bad weather. I look out the window and it looks like somebody has come and built a snowman next to my car. And I'm like, what the fuck? As I go out, I look, we got 2 feet of snow on top of the open door. There was 1.5 feet of snow in in the car seat. The snowman was my open door next to the car. And me and Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, Brian Hildebrand, got stuck in a storm coming back from Beckley. On another occasion, he was riding with me, and we had to get off the interstate because the interstate was so treacherous with the ice and the snow and people spinning out that we actually took the back roads, because on the back roads, it's acknowledged that everybody was going to be going 15 miles an hour tops. And it was almost safer till we could get to an area that had been cleared up a little better. It took us like 8 hours to do a 3 or 4 hour drive. Fucked up another time in Ring of Honor. I was supposed to be up there for which I did make the show, but Stace and I were going a couple of days early to spend, a little time, because for whatever reason, she enjoys New York City. But we were going to leave on let's say a Thursday. Well, bad weather was called for. We said, shit, we're going to fucking leave Wednesday night and get ahead of it. But by the time that we could get our shit together and start leaving, it'd start coming. So we actually started driving on a Wednesday night from Louisville to New York City and actually got there on a Friday evening. Because we had to stop in Lexington, Kentucky. We only got 60 miles. Then it was all we could do one day to do another 300 miles. And it's all interstate. And finally got there 2 days later. And there was another time in Ring of Honor, now that I think about it. The show was actually, one of the 2 shows in Philly was snowed out. They were still doing the HDNet TV tapings. And the plan was to do 2 days of taping on one weekend, and then the following weekend was a big internet pay-per-view in New York. So in the middle of that, Stace and I were going to spend because it was Valentine's, right? It was actually probably, 10 years ago this month, as a matter of fact. It was Valentine's, so Stace and I were going to do the TV tapings in Philadelphia, go down and spend several days in Baltimore at the Inner Harbor, going to Little Italy, and then come back up for the New York Ring of Honor pay-per-view. This is before we were parents and had responsibilities at home. And I looked up, and the average temperature in Baltimore on Valentine's Day was supposed to be like 42 degrees. It didn't fucking make it. We did one night of TV in Philadelphia, and it started snowing that afternoon. And by the time we got out of there, we could barely get back to the fucking airport, and canceled the next day. And they got 18 to 20 inches of snow. I'm as a matter of fact, I'm underestimating. It was in the low 20 inches of snow. And we sat there for 2 days until the roads were clear enough that we had reservations at the Inner Harbor at the goddamn Embassy Suites, or whichever, I can't remember where we were staying, at the Inner Harbor. And so I said, well, fuck it, we can sit there as well as we can sit here. So we got in Black Beauty and drove to Baltimore. They got 34 inches of snow. The snow drifts were as high as your head, and the fucking where they'd plowed some streets. And the whole town except Little Italy was shut down. So we stayed there for 4 days and looked out the window at shit. And then we drove up to New York, which was shitty and sloshy and muck covered by that point, and did that Ring of Honor show. That was a real pain in the weather ass.
Hey, I was thinking, when you said Mid-South before, did you experience any tornadoes when you were there?
No, thank goodness. We had a lot of thunderstorms and, shit like that, but I recall more tornado warnings happening on a regular basis here in Kentucky than I do down in Louisiana.
I was thinking about Oklahoma specifically, but yeah.
Well, we only had to pop in and out of there once or twice a month. I don't think I was in the state of Oklahoma ever more than 24 hours straight, because it was at the far end of the territory. We were in and out of there, especially when both shows were on the same day. And we were driving from somewhere the night before and then going back home afterwards. We would literally, on those days, we would be in the Oklahoma state limits to do 2 shows, one in Oklahoma City and one in Tulsa, and not be in the state for fucking more than 12 hours. So, meh.
All right.
Anyway, but I dare you, I double dog. As a matter of fact, I wish Manscaped was a sponsor this week, because you don't have any hair on your fucking balls if you don't put that story I just told about the snowstorm in Dallas up on YouTube under the title, Jim Cornette on getting 6 inches in Dallas.
I was going to put Jim Cornette gets a snow job, but that works better.
Hey! We've all gotten a snow job in our lives at times. Speaking of a snow job, I told everybody the big news that I have purchased and is being delivered shortly, the first smartphone I've ever had in order to participate in the cameo revolution that everybody's wanting me to get into. And guess when they're going to try to deliver, apparently, this phone to me here at my home at the castle high atop Cornette Mountain. The day right after we get a foot of fucking snow. I don't know if they'll be able to get it here with a helicopter. So I'll keep everybody updated on that. But you were shocked and amazed when you actually asked me, when I told the people on the experience this past week, I'm getting a phone. And you said, well, who's the first person you're going to call? I said, I'm not going to call anybody on this fucking thing. It's for video, for the cameo, possibly for our YouTube, things and such of that nature.
What about texting? I'm sure you have lots of friends you want to text to.
Are you out of your fucking mind? I don't want to be throwing this thing off the deck, especially with a foot of snow out there. I won't be able to find it until springtime. If I tried to send one text, I guarantee you I'd either be throwing it or I'd be jumping up and down on it with both feet. And I spent too much money on this package. But anyway, Hotchkiss is going to be putting all that together.
There's the dilemma. We need the smartphone for the content. But the content that may get the most views is Jim Cornette smashes his smartphone. Jim Cornette jumps on his smartphone.
Hotchkiss can record with his phone when I try to do these cameos. Well, no, but anyway, but yes, and that is the thing. And we will have by this week or this weekend on the Experience, Saturday, February 20th or thereabouts, we will have an on sale date, as they say, for the first part of March, when I will be putting a limited number of these personalized video messages on Cameo on sale, and we're going to try to make the trial at it and see if it just drives me out of my mind, if we're ever going to do it again. And also the new Jim Cornette action figures. Well, I shouldn't say new. The original action figure has been out of stock for about a year and a half. Will be back in mid-March, and also more of the Christmas variant that sold out and broke the internet last year. And both of these will be the last runs of these particular action figures. So we will see whether they last until Christmas or even Thanksgiving this year. But I'm going to have an exact on sale date on the Experience this weekend also for those as well. So everybody stay tuned. Big stuff. Big stuff. This is your show.
Big stuff. 6 inches.
I swear, I'm telling you, just title it. Jim Cornette on getting 6 inches in Dallas. We did 150,000 views on Nia Jax screaming my hole.
She didn't scream my 6 inches. She screamed my hole. If it was Jim Cornette on my hole,
somebody's got to be screaming about 6 inches, and somebody's got to be screaming about their hole. Anyway, this is your show, but I do have something to read.
Please.
Can I read this?
Yes, you can.
My friend Dale Spear sent this to me.
Dale's a good guy.
You know Dale.
Great guy.
And this has nothing to do with wrestling, which is why I thought I would bring it up. He basically sent me an exchange between two people. You know who, a person of your cultural standing, Brian, you know who David Simon is.
Yes, of course.
Well, explain to the people who he is, the creator of The Wire, and et cetera, et cetera.
David Simon was, I believe, a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, and he was reporting on all the homicides, and that's how he developed what was a book. It's a great book, and became the television show Homicide. And then he's done some other shows, but he famously was the man behind The Wire, which I would say, if it isn't the single greatest television show of all time, it's in the top 3. And it's very hard to argue that anything is better. 5 seasons, perfection, an amazing look at the corruption from the street level to the newspaper to the political level in the city of Baltimore. Brilliant show that I'm sure you probably never watched.
Well, but no, I've seen a couple of them. Baltimore, because I was working there for a while. I think the TV station was right in some of the areas they used to shoot on location for The Wire. But do you also know who a guy named Hugh Hewitt is?
Oh, yeah, that guy sucks.
Yeah. Well, Dale calls him noted fuckface. Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt is another one of the right-wing, commentators on the right-wing media, and no more background on him is necessary because he's an idiot. But basically, he got mad at David Simon, and besides the fact that he implies that David Simon is some kind of friends with Harvey Weinstein, because, since all the show business people were the friends of Weinstein in these conspiracy theories these grifters are running. And also he accuses David Simon of being a resident of Los Angeles, living in La La Land, one of the California elites, right? Which you've just given his goddamn background, and he's not actually that. So Hugh Hewitt said to David Simon, "Gentlemen like you that give Hollywood its reputation for kindness, graciousness, and grace that marked Grant, Stewart, Astaire, and so many more," in sarcastically referring to a comment that Simon had made. He followed, "continue to demonstrate that these days art requires rage and blinding anger mixed with a joy in displaying ignorance. Friend of Harvey's? ? Listen to what David Simon said to Hugh Hewitt, the right-wing dipshit. Hewitt, you hollowed-out little fuck squib. You've crossed the only Rubicon that truly matters here in your transparent attempt to cater to the beshitted and bespittled... God damn it, I can't get through it. Beshitted and bespittled deplorati, who easily squee at any half-ass trope that imagines decadent and vile elites. You have wantonly slandered me through a linkage to this Hollywood locale. If you ever get a single lonesome fact correct in your entire fecal-flecked career of rote hackery, and that is an ambition to exceed your entire skill set, know this. I live and work in Baltimore, Maryland, where the citizenry make a point of pausing in our routine of nightly intramural violence and disorder whenever we catch the scent of a true and enduring piece of shit edging over the city line, whereupon we close ranks and hunt that low fucker en masse, bag him live, then barter him off in pieces for crack vials and bags of Utz crab chips. So yes, you dumb scrote-licking whelp of a media whore, stay where you are or keep hunting for me in West L.A. because Baltimore is not your speed, as facts and reality are not your domain.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I think I've possibly found my soulmate.
Your spirit animal.
Anyway.
Now you have to watch The Wire. Let me tell you something. Even if we didn't do it on the show because it would take a while, if we did it on Patreon, people would love to hear you do an episode-by-episode review of The Wire. Because it sounds like you never really gave it a chance. Oh, I saw an episode here and there. You have to watch it.
I should. It's like, I should get the box set of DVDs like the young folks do and binge watch, right?
Or you could buy it on your smartphone and then just shoot it to your TV.
Yeah, I can shoot something your way, too.
Ask Mr. Featherbottom to get you an Apple TV, and then you could shoot stuff from your smartphone right to the Apple TV. It'll pop up on whatever TV in the house you want, and you'll go, holy shit, this was so easy.
I don't want shit to be just being shot off and popping up on things indiscriminately when I don't know. There's signals going through the air. That's what happens in Baltimore. What would be more Baltimore than shit being shot off and popping off all over the place? There's signals going through the air, Brian. I gotta wrap my head in a cookie sheet. What do you got? You got anything on the show today, Brian?
Yeah, well, first of all, just in case, who knows?
YouTube?
Who knows? I don't know if the Jericho Family Values segment will make it onto YouTube. But we do indeed have some questions here closing in on 1 hour into the show that we will get to.
Well, shit.
Momentarily. We've been doing this for a little while now.
We have. Well, you know what? Goddamn, this must be why my fucking hair's falling out, Brian. Because we just get on these worked up on these whole things and on these tirades and tangents. I'm pulling the hair out of my head. If only I'd known about the people at Keeps before now. Holy mackerel. If I'd have known this, then I could have so much more hair than I do right now. Because, 2 out of 3 men will experience some kind of hair loss by the time they're 35, and more than 50 million men in the United States suffer from male pattern baldness. I've got a pattern on top of my head. There's only 2 FDA-approved medications that can prevent hair loss. And Keeps offers a simple and stress-free way to keep your hair. They've got virtual, they call them doctor consultations. That means on the interwebs. You don't have to go in person. Medications delivered straight to your door every 3 months, so you don't have to leave the house. And the treatment start at just $10 per month because Keeps offers generic versions of those 2 FDA-approved medications. Folks, prevention is the key. This won't grow hair on a billiard ball, but if you have hair, you can keep it with Keeps. But you can take 4 to 6 months to see the results, so you got to start early. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to Keeps, KEEPS.com/JCE, and you'll get your first months of treatment for free. Keeps.com/JCE. Get the first month treatment for free. Keeps, more of your hair. Keeps it.
All right, well, let's get some questions here on the show.
Keeps my questions coming.
Well, it'll be the first one, actually.
Oh, really? All right.
This one was sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Denny in Birmingham, England. What are your thoughts about Sammy Guevara reportedly upsetting Tony Khan as he apparently refused to do some work Impact had set for him, citing that he didn't like the direction of the character? Reports state that Jericho had to call Don Callis to stop Sammy getting banned from Impact, but it sounds like Sammy is standing his ground and calling bullshit on the AEW and Impact creative. And I have a few articles here.
Well, yeah, because that was worded kind of flowery, that he didn't like the direction of the character. Apparently, as part of the working relationship they've got, they had something that they wanted Sammy to come and do at their taping that would continue something they had done on AEW. And apparently, whoever the brain trusts are in charge at each company had approved of this thing happening. But apparently, the day beforehand, Sammy Guevara was so thrilled about it. I don't know when he found out about it. And nobody has said that he was one of the people that agreed to it to begin with, just that it was agreed to amongst the companies. So there may be more to this story. The day beforehand, Sammy Guevara switches his flight to Nashville to the following day, the day of the taping, and doesn't go, and apparently had then registered some kind of reluctance at doing whatever the fuck they wanted him to do. And then he did fly to Nashville, but by then he's texting Jericho or whoever, hey, can we come up with some other shit? Or how about we do this idea? Obviously, it was some bullshit that he didn't want to do, and he was trying to figure out a way, and Jericho, apparently, even though he was in Nashville, he didn't go to the taping. Jericho said, this was reported, just fly back home. Whether that was Jericho saying, well, they don't want you, so come on back, you fucked up now, or Jericho going, this probably ain't going to get any better, come on back now, who the fuck knows? But the point is, everybody that tweeted at me earlier about it, it's like, oh, you're going to roast him. I can't do that, because normally I would say, oh, some young fucking whippersnapper, green fucking kid don't like the direction of his character. Fuck him. But remember, this is Impact Wrestling. They just had a goddamn wedding where the fucking groom got shot and fucking they had a murder mystery. And they've had teleportation and demons and other dimensions. So who knows what kind of fucking jackleg dog and pony show that they wanted him to get involved with. And one would have to think from some of the things he's been involved with on AEW that he was very liberal in the things that he'll be involved with. So this had to be a fucking doozy. But until I know what it was that he turned down, maybe they wanted him to take a goddamn piccolo and shove it up his ass and fucking walk on his hands while he's fucking farting fucking Dixie. Who knows? I've got to hear what the thing was. I got to hear the original idea, and then I got to hear his alternate suggestion before I know whose side I'm on.
If he's farting Dixie, that's very different than what other guys used to do to Dixie.
Well, hey, Impact. And then they were blowing. Well, I guess they weren't blowing Dixie, but well, and she was coming around the mountain doing 90 when the chain on her motorcycle broke. She was lying in her ass with the muffler up her ass and her titties playing Dixie on the spokes.
Was this something you sang on the playground as a child?
This was a childish thing, yes. But when we grow up and become adults, we put away the childish things. But we never forget them.
I have one that my dad said that it was something my dad used to hear when he was a kid on the playground. And he would say it does every now and then to make us laugh. And now I say it to my kids. Your mother's in the Navy, your father's in the Marines, your sister's on the toilet, bombing submarines. I still get a kick out of that one.
Do your kids laugh?
They do. They do.
Well, good. Some things are timeless.
Where's mom? She's bombing submarines.
Yeah. Dropping the Browns off at the Super Bowl, letting a fudge monkey out of his cage.
You know, the Sammy Guevara story is interesting for a few reasons. One, obviously, Don Callis of Impact Wrestling has a very close relationship with Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, which is probably the main reason why there's any relationship between AEW and Impact, because this benefits Impact far more than it benefits AEW. AEW, you could say the good and the bad, but AEW is a major promotion on a major network. Impact Wrestling is wrestling purgatory. It's a wrestling promotion that needs a lifeline. And for some reason, AEW is throwing them a lifeline, and I don't get it. Now, apparently whatever they're doing with AEW talent is approved by Tony Khan. What does that tell you? The fact that Sammy went there, and whatever he turned down, I would think, had already been approved by Tony Khan. Again, I don't know for sure, but based on what I've been hearing.
And I will say it was, again, unfair the way and the emailer, the questioner, phrased it. And yeah, I understand that's the way you phrase it from the outside. Well, he was unhappy with the direction of his character. They booked him to do a couple of days of taping where he was going to be involved in some kind of deal with somebody, right? That's the way we'd say it in the fucking wrestling business. And I'm sure they worked out some idea of some shit they wanted him to do. And it was probably fucking stupid. And he didn't want to do it. Either that or maybe, I especially after he was chastised for things that he'd said on the podcast or on a podcast long ago. He was fined and kept off TV. He doesn't look like a guy that's going to go in there and say, I'm not going to do a job for so-and-so. I'm not going to fucking do a job for her. I'm not going to work with so-and-so just on the face of it. I'm not going to have a match with this guy. He comes from a TV show where they regularly bump around for midgets. So I don't think he's trying to be a fucking big star saying he doesn't want to put somebody over, doesn't want to work with somebody. That sounds out of character. And he was trying to suggest, according to the reporting, alternate things to do. So it sounds like it was something he was just embarrassed to fucking be involved with. And imagine what that might have to be.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It could even be that he heard about scummy things that executives in Impact Wrestling may have been involved with, and he said, I don't want to work for these people. We don't know.
Oh, quit. He's not.
We don't know.
He's not going to have integrity of that kind, but...
The article that broke the story that has been, I believe, confirmed in every way since by various reporters adding on to it was on Slam Wrestling by Bob Kapoor. Slam Wrestling, of course, is run by Greg Oliver, a guy with a lot of credibility. I have a lot of respect for Greg. Bob Kapoor, I don't know if you know Bob Kapoor. I don't know him, but I know of him. He writes for Greg, but he was previously, I believe, at least on-air talent. I don't know what he did behind the scenes of anything.
Oh, he was the manager of, help me.
I don't know. I remember him with a microphone interviewing Scarlett Bordeaux, and they got nervous, and he called himself Bobo. I saw that clip. But my point is, he was involved with Impact Wrestling. So when he's reporting on something from Impact Wrestling, you have to think likely he has a source there that is relaying the story to him, that he would be able to come out with this story. So what we're hearing, what he reported originally, I would think is coming from the Impact Wrestling side.
Well, I can't keep up with who's mad at who these days. I'm just a simple bird lawyer, just practicing bird law the best way I know how.
That has become one of your favorite things to throw in there.
And now people are tweeting me the fucking still frame of Charlie in the courtroom with I'm just a simple bird lawyer.
Did you pop when you saw Charlie ask for milk steak?
Yes. And also now rum ham has become a tradition around the house also here every fall.
But again, according to the original article by Bob Kapoor on Slam Wrestling, Chris Jericho floated the idea of Guevara appearing on Impact. He pitched the idea to Tony Khan, who contacted Impact about writing Guevara into an angle at the last minute. Impact's first take was rejected, but a second idea was given the green light by Tony Khan. That's the idea that Sammy Guevara decided he didn't want to do. So again, this is something that, again, started with Jericho suggesting it. Apparently, Tony Khan recently did an interview where he revealed it was Jericho's idea to do the Matt Hardy transport stuff.
Teleportation,
that's the word I was trying to think of.
Lord.
That was all Jericho's idea.
Well, wait a minute, though. Was it now? Is he being a little shit-stainish? Because weren't the Hardys in Impact a few when Matt got broken? Weren't they teleporting back then? That's why I never watched any of that stuff. I didn't want to dislike the Hardys.
Maybe. I'm not exactly sure because I don't watch Impact and I haven't.
It could have been that Jericho decided to steal one of Matt's ideas from himself so he could pitch it and then pitch. Well, you should teleport again. It was so good last time. Who knows?
You know,
Good.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Sammy Guevara is a really talented guy. They have botched everything with the Inner Circle and with the Sammy Guevara babyface turn. And some people think it's even going to be a Jericho babyface turn.
Oh, wait a minute. He just, I quit. He walks off. Boy, what a fucking shocking, impactful way to change your roster in the Inner Circle.
You know what's even better?
See ya.
He says, I quit. We know why he quit. He walks off. And then he's walking off, and Alex Marvez running up. Well, Sammy, why did you quit? He just... Are you watching the show, Marvez? Are you watching the show?
Well, no. Marvez can't watch the show because he's too busy standing out in the parking lot and on the golf course waiting in case somebody does walk by for him to interview him. He doesn't know what's going on in the building.
All right. Well, let's get another question.
All righty.
Here on this excellent episode. This is one that a lot of people have sent in. So I'm going to actually pull up an article instead of just reading a question. But I thought of you when I heard this story because times are very different. But something like this had happened previously in the WWF when times were tough. Here's an article from WrestlingNews.co that several people sent in. The author is Paul Davis. PW Insider is reporting...
Is he the same guy that did I Go Crazy? When I look in your eyes, I go crazy.
I don't think it's the same guy, but the headline is, Report, WWE puts a freeze on employee promotions and raises. PW Insider is reporting that employees and staffers were told on Friday that the company will not be giving promotions or raises going forward. The company reportedly made these decisions over the last few weeks due to the earnings from the last quarter. What? Wait
a minute, I thought they were making more money than they've ever made in their fucking life. They're selling these things for $1 billion to Fox Network.
It was a record year. I don't think it was a record quarter, but let me go back to the story here. What is interesting is that WWE is making more money than ever after Peacock secured the rights for WWE Network programming. The 5-year deal is reportedly worth $1 billion. Employees are...
Wait a minute, you mean it's worth $1 billion?
Employees are still reportedly able to get bonuses, but there will be no promotions or raises for the foreseeable future. There is no word how long this rule will remain in place. The news was said to have been delivered by supervisors and managers of different departments. WrestleVotes, which is a Twitter account, reported earlier that there was a lot of unhappiness backstage at SmackDown among the talent and the road crew, and some were said to be angry. It's not clear if this is related to the edict laid out earlier to the company employees. And I brought up...
No, they just changed the menu and catering, and everybody was up in arms about it. I think it's related.
I brought up that you were involved with something very similar years ago, of course, when times were tough, and Vince said that he was going to slash the salaries. This is not give raises or promotions. Back then it was, I'm going to cut the salaries of the wrestling executives, not the regular employees, just the wrestling executives.
Well, no, and actually I was involved after the fact and didn't find out about the facts for a while after that, but I shall explain. Apparently, what happened was in 1995, Vince had got his annual fiscal report and found out that for the first time ever, he had, since they had expanded nationally, he had lost money. He always said, $6 million out of my ass, pal. And at the time, I was just working the TVs. I was still obviously in Tennessee running Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I was coming up as a manager and working the television tapings and pay-per-views and et cetera. So I wasn't privy to all the inner office details. And even old Uncle Dave back then didn't have all the scoops. But what he had done was he'd had a meeting. This all came out later on and after the fact and everything. But he had a meeting and he did not cancel, but cut all of the wrestling side executives' salaries while leaving the office people's alone. Now, having said that, he at the time wasn't paying the office people or hadn't been the regular rank and file office people, as much as possibly they are today or blah, blah, blah. But he'd hired a bunch of high-priced executives after the steroid trial, and they had to create a human resources department and had to get supposed outside executives that would keep them on the straight and narrow, and they paid them a fucking fortune to do absolutely nothing. A couple of them ended up being sticky-fingered and stole from them. But the wrestling people, J.J. Dillon in talent relations, he got cut. And that was the reason why he left in 1996. He kept it quiet, but he couldn't believe after Vince had fucking got him up there, talked him into buying a house, advanced him money to buy a house, then cut his fucking salary 40%. And he waited until he could sell his fucking house. And when he did, he went in and said he was out of there. That's when he went to WCW in Atlanta. And the reason why he left, because they cut Lord Al Hayes. And that's why he retired, right? He just said, well, fuck it then. I can't do the accent.
He went to work for Alperstein, didn't he? For the AWF.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he retired from the WWF.
No, I know, but I mean,
a couple of shots for the guy. It wasn't like there was any kind of full-time work. Of course, Bruce took it and smiled. But because here's the thing, I did not start in the office until February of 96, and this happened sometime in 95. So I was not aware that their personal. I knew business was not doing too well from the performance side. You could see when you go to towns and they're not full or whatever the fuck, right? But I didn't know that they had cut the office salaries like almost in half. And obviously, I've said this before, the offer had been open to me from Vince for some time if I wanted to be on the creative team. And at the point where I realized I couldn't go any further with Smoky Mountain without something else, we needed a sponsor, an international deal, something. And I thought if I go to Vince and say, hey, you've got a lot of talent from us and we're about to have to close down, not be able to produce the show, whatever, maybe he can work a little something. Because, I mean, we were talking at that time about a difference maker would have been $2,500, $3,000 a week, for fuck's sake. Now that's not even catering. But anyway, when I pitched him that, he instead pitched, well, if you do close down, let me know, pal. We'd love to have you. And I said, shit. That backfired. So finally I said, all right. So I called up and make the deal. And when I heard my office salary to work for the WWF, I was kind of, well, okay, I get, it's just me. Beggars can't be choosers, and they know that I'm not really looking to go to WCW or anything else. I've still got some bills from Smoky Mountain to pay off, so they know I needs the job. And I'm also still working as an on-camera talent, so I'll be making more money on top of that. So, I'm taking it, but I was unimpressed with the salary for being on the creative team or working in the office for the WWF. And it wasn't a while because Bruce never bothered to tell me that they had just cut the goddamn office salaries in half about 6 months beforehand, right? And then, gradually after a while when business perked back up, but at that time they had even taken the water coolers. That was the joke. They took the water coolers out of the office so they wouldn't have to keep up with the subscription of the water bottles that were coming in. And they just did a drastic cost cutting in 95. And then, like I said, that carried over for a couple years. And then business started picking up again. And then suddenly they were just insane and they'd spend any amount of money on anything. It went the opposite direction. But yeah, they took the water coolers out to penalize the office employees and fucking cut the wrestling staff's annual intake in half.
What do you think of this story? The fact that, okay, the quarter wasn't the highest quarter, but it was a record year. And they've decided this is the year that they're not giving out bonuses. They're not giving out promotions.
Hey, well, we've talked about this on the program before from the wrestling side. That they don't need stars anymore. They just need acrobats and people to, skate and holiday on ice. They don't sell the big fight. They don't sell the big pay-per-view. They don't need a box office attraction to sell out Madison Square Garden. So it's the same thing now with office people. Take it or leave it. We're not going to give you a promotion. We're making a ton of money, but we're almost now bulletproof, foolproof. We'll never go out of business. We've got all these rights fees and everything, so we can find any trained monkey off an assembly line to do your job in graphics and creative services and fucking whatever. And it's the same thing as they don't have to find Tarzan now. All they need is a steady supply of cheetahs. If one monkey breaks his fucking ankle, call the fucking zoo, get another monkey. They're all interchangeable. I'm not surprised. Meanwhile, off the fucking stock scam, all those upper executives are fucking millionaires just because they have a job in a company that they basically is at this point is bulletproof.
Based on this story, and whatever the reasoning really is behind it, based on the Peacock deal for WWE Network, which has been such a big part of everything they've promoted for, almost 10 years now, I always said I would look for a stock buyback. But not seeing that yet. They have this guy, Nick Khan, there. He's a deal maker. Do you think that WWE is setting up for a potential sale right now?
I can't imagine it. Once Vince is gone, I can't imagine why they wouldn't.
What about before Vince is gone? That's the question.
Well, only if he's in a medically induced coma. Well, now that I think about that, if he could get some ridiculously astronomical amount of money, like $5 billion for the WWE from somebody, and use that as the crowning achievement of his life, or maybe it might have to be, how much was the UFC? How much did
I can look that up.
It might have to be $1 more than that. I don't know, because I mean, WCW never set any record with Ted Turner that would be anywhere close to that. So it would have to be the biggest combat sports sale in history, about at least $1, and maybe he would consider that his crowning achievement and sell it.
$4 billion.
Okay, then yeah, well then maybe $4 billion in one, or maybe, like I said, $5 billion, just to have for round numbers. The only way that he would probably sell the company is if he could do some kind of record sale like that, and it'd be reported everywhere, and it would be what he got from his dad, and boom, here it was 40 years later, whatever. Otherwise, as soon as Vince is gone, especially if Triple H has set himself up where he's really the most integral component of keeping the wrestling business running, because I would think that at the higher levels, while they probably don't respect the individual wrestlers, we can get another one of those or another one of those, they would have to know that that guy at that level is integral in running a very specialized business endeavor, whatever they call it. So we got to keep him. Sell a fucking thing to NBC for $5 billion and he gets stock and a fucking executive job to let him not fuck it up too bad. How the fuck would you turn that down?
Yeah, I can see Triple H kind of being like Dana White, who stays around after the sale because they need someone to run it.
There you go. And everybody else cashes out and you never see their fat white asses again.
How long would that last? And who would be the Jack Petrick of NBC Comcast?
But you know what? Here's the thing. It's doable. It's doable because they did it with the UFC. You can actually buy something and keep the guy that either started it or popularized it or revolutionized it or whoever, a Dana White, around, and it can still run somewhat similarly and not run its fucking fans off. They do it in sports franchises all the time. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do run the fans off with a particular owner, but it's not common. It's just that every incidence of this in wrestling has been a disaster because the people that have gotten into it didn't respect not only the wrestling business for what it was, but didn't respect the people that knew how to do it. You know, Jim Herd came in and thought all the wrestling people were full of shit. Well, they may have been full of shit, but they knew more about the wrestling business than he did. That's indisputable. But you don't spend $5 billion on something and immediately go in and say, well, we know how to do this better. Even NBC, they would have to know that it's a specialized thing and they'd want the key people to still keep it running. It wasn't like when Turner bought the thing, is like, well, if they've been doing it, these wrestling people, well, we can do it so much better. Fuck you. So I don't think they would. I mean, look, it's not a goddamn, anything to write home about right now. How can they fuck wrestling up any more than it's been fucked up? And how can the WWE be any worse than it? Because it hadn't ever been worse in its history than it is right now. So I don't think they could fuck it up too much worse as far as destroying the credibility of the business or not making stars or making everything be phony and all showbiz. What else are they going to do to it?
Well, one thing, if WWE is in a position right now where they're not giving out promotions or raises, perhaps they need to save money. Perhaps they're worried about the future. Maybe they could save some money on what they're doing in the office with our good friends at NetSuite.
You know what? That's right, because whether it's the WWE generating hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue a year, or whether it's you, a sole business owner such as you are, Brian Last with Arcadian Vanguard, or I am with Cornette's Collectibles, or many of our listeners are out there with their various endeavors. If you're a business owner of any size, you don't need us to tell you that running a business is tough, but you might be making it harder on yourself than is necessary. Don't get bogged down with the QuickBooks and the spreadsheets and get all slowed down. Upgrade to NetSuite. As a matter of fact, Hotchkiss Featherbottom is buying me a NetSuite. Folks, you don't have to pay for multiple systems that don't give you the information that you need when you need it. You can ditch the spreadsheets and all the old software. You can upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. And I had an uncle that was in the cloud business, and it was an up and down business. One day feast, the next day famine. So you got to stay on top of things. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and everything you need all in one place instantaneously. 24,000 companies are using NetSuite right now, and you can be one of them, but not just a face in the crowd, a valued customer. You can let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com. That's NETSUITE, like a hotel suite, netsuite.com/JCE. Schedule your free product tour right now, netsuite.com/JCE. Did I mention it's netsuite.com/JCE? Save all kinds of time, money, and aggravation. I hate it when I don't have information on something that I'm talking about.
Okay, Jim, our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Charlie.
CM Punk recently said the 5 wrestlers he would like to work with in AEW are Will Hobbs, Darby Allin, Brian Pillman Jr., Ricky Starks, and Jungle Boy. What are your thoughts on CM Punk's list?
Well, I can understand the last 4, and I can understand all 5 of them. The last 4 would be good matches, and the first one, I think he's looking at Will Hobbs as a project, because everybody knows the guy's got a lot of potential. He's just green. I can't say they've done any favors for him with the way they booked him so far, where he was suddenly a babyface that made saves 3 weeks in a row with a sympathetic backstory about a brother being murdered, and then suddenly switched heel and took the money and blah, blah, blah. And now he stands there and flexes a lot. But you could get a lot out of that guy. So I understand that. Jungle Boy is great with somebody to lead him, as we just saw with Dax Harwood. Starks, we've talked to, he can work his ass off and talk. That would be fun. I assume Punk's just going for stuff that would be fun in the ring for him, or creatively some kind of way. He mentioned, Pillman Jr., because that's the thing. Pillman, he has so much athletic potential. He's got a natural charisma. We've talked about him before. He didn't grow up around his dad and around the business on the inside, so he's not a second-generation wrestler in terms of he was a naturally smart to the psychology of the business and everything like that. So he struggled with that at first. Psychology of what to do, possibly when, or ring positioning or whatever, but he's come a long way, so I can see that also. Was there somebody else, or did I just mention them all?
Darby Allin.
Oh, and Darby Allin. Well, there you go. Because he's a fucking weirdo. We've established that, and he loves body bags and loves to be either thrown off things while he's in them or drug around in them. I don't get the guy, but he's got, again, that weird charisma that for people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like, and Punk could probably get some mileage out of it.
If by chance AEW ever were able to get their hands on CM Punk, I know he's filming, I saw a picture, he's filming some scenes for that show Heels, which I think is on Stars. It's a wrestling, I don't know if it's a comedy or just a behind-the-scenes show. I'm really not even sure. But let's say he gets the bug. You know what? I kind of want to do this again. And let's say he doesn't want to go and talk to Vince and Hunter. So that leaves AEW or New Japan. And let's say he wants to stay close to home. It leaves AEW. He would instantly be the best promo in AEW. If he went in there, how would you use him? Would you use him in a feud against one of these younger guys to try to elevate them? Would you put him in with someone like Cody, who's not an equal level star to CM Punk, but in the AEW universe is a top star?
Yeah.
How would you use CM Punk in AEW? Against a younger guy to elevate them, or against one of the top guys there? You have Omega, Jericho, whatever we want to say about him. These are top AEW guys. How would you use them?
See, here's the thing. That's easy to say. How would you use him? Since we're just engaging in what Vince would call mental masturbation here. Because it obviously depends. When you've got a guy that there's an element of he's doing you a favor. He doesn't have to do this. He's a star, right? He's going to be concerned about what he's not just showing up going, oh, goddamn, rape me in a public square, whatever you want to do. I need the job. You're paying him a lot of money, but part of the reason why you're paying him money is because he's a valuable enough attraction that you're going to make it back and more. And if he's a valuable enough attraction that you're going to make it back and more, then he's going to have ideas about things he wants to do that fit him. And as he's just mentioned, guys he'd like to work with, but there has to be a business balance in that. And you're right. None of those guys mentioned are top stars right now. And let's face it, if they did sign CM Punk and he showed up on television, he would instantly be the talk of the wrestling world. He'd instantly be the biggest name star they have. And of course, all the fucking AEW fans are probably going to just shit their bloomers now that I said that. But once again, we're not talking the greatest wrestler and the fucking greatest wrestling artist. We're talking who is a person who more people have seen, heard of, know about in the world than another person. And CM Punk is a bigger star because he was on the biggest television for a fairly long period of time when many more people were watching it. So it just do the math. It's not denigrating anybody on the program with the exception of Jericho. And I would think probably ahead of Ambrose because Punk was used better when they had more viewers, wasn't he? Ambrose Wolfinger or John Moxley.
And I'll tell you, that's the match I would hope they wouldn't do. The promos would be good. But Moxley and Punk, I just hate Moxley's matches.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think Punk would want to come back to wrestling and be, rattled around in the goddamn concession stand.
And he can give Jericho the same speech he gave Hunter. I don't need to wrestle you. You need to wrestle me.
You need to wrestle me. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Cody and Punk would be the best quality match. It'd have the best layout. It would make the most sense. It would have mainstream appeal. Both guys could talk and get it over. And I would have to think that some type of happy medium could be come to between AEW and Punk where, okay, if we're going to pay you the money it's going to take to get you here, then obviously we're not going to have you do any of the stupid shit that we've been having everybody else do, because he wouldn't come if that was the case. He wouldn't come if he was going to be bouncing around for midgets or being kidnapped and duct taped to a goddamn Chase Lounge or whatever. He obviously would have to be heavily involved. And if you got Cody involved, then they actually have minds. Cody sometimes loses his, but not mostly when his matches, big matches are concerned. Have Punk come in and do a thing with Cody. If I was, you don't even need a title involved there. and have him beat Cody, and then have him pick the young guy that he wanted to elevate, and just, and do something to where, once again, Punk would come out on top at the end, but he would have elevated that younger guy, and maybe you do a couple of those, and then maybe you get Cody back in the mix or whatever. I don't think Punk would want to have anything to do with Olivier and all that horse shit that he does. What did I call him the other day? You tickled me and made my face hurt. I didn't even realize I did.
The other day.
Said it.
At the start of a segment, everyone knows him now as Twinkle Toes McFingerbang. And all of a sudden the other day, you just out of nowhere hit him with a new nickname that you instantly forgot about. It was Harpo Fingerfuck.
Well, and you reminded me of that. But the point is, I don't think Punk wouldn't want to do any of that shit. And for, like you said, with Moxley, I don't think he'd want to be rattling around in the concession stand. And I think his shit would have to make sense to him and to everyone else, or he wouldn't do it. So I mean, there's a lot of hurdles to jump over there when we've seen when they get a star that knows what they're doing. On that rare occasion, they don't follow his lead and build around him. They instead assimilate him into their, Benny Hill Music Hall review. And it just, I don't think Punk would come back to wrestling just to be minimized and become one of the boys in a fucking dog and pony show.
One other question about this. CM Punk already has, I believe, a store set up on Pro Wrestling Tees to sell his merchandise. If you're AEW and you put down a bunch of money and you sign him, do you let him keep his merch or do you want a piece of it? And if you're Punk, what do you do?
Well, I mean, there's something to be said both ways. Right now, he owns his stuff and he can do his thing, but he doesn't have a national TV show pushing it. I would think that, once again, there could be some happy medium where, for the term of whatever deal that he would make with AEW, then he could make a separate deal for merchandise that would be exclusive for the period of time of the deal, but that he would get a healthy royalty cut on, and let the national TV show push his merchandise. He'd be making probably more money with a healthy royalty cut initially than he would doing it himself, and they'd be selling merchandise for a hot guy that they didn't have rights to sell one penny of beforehand. And then when the deal is over, everybody returns to their respective corners and Punk can sell his shit whenever he wants to.
Our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Sam in Toronto. What are your thoughts on Jim's favorite musical artist, Bad Bunny,
oh God,
reportedly being the top WWE merchandise seller of 2021 so far?
What?
With over $500,000 in sales. Furthermore, what do you think of the rumor that he will be teaming with Damien Priest against Frogger and Morrison at WrestleMania? And he attached an article here. Let me just open this. This is from Forbes.com. Rapper Bad Bunny dominating WWE merchandising sales. And it says here, according to Fightful Select, well, everyone's just a news aggregator at this point in time. According to Fightful Select, he's the top earner on WWE Shop for 2021, more than $500,000 in sales to WWE. So what are your thoughts on Bad Bunny? Usually this was the big metric for Vince. How's this guy doing with merch? Let's push him. Bad Bunny's selling more merch than everybody. All of his stars.
Put the belt on him. How the fuck? I just saw Bugs Bunny is going to be the host of Saturday Night Live. Bugs Bunny's going to be here. Bugs Bunny's on the pay-per-view. Bugs Bunny's with Damien Priest. Bugs Bunny's selling more merchandise than the boys. We hadn't heard of fucking Bugs fucking Bunny. 2 weeks before he came out and perpetrated that song where poor Booker T had to stand there. And, people still didn't understand the words that were coming out of my mouth. They said, well, the name of the song was Booker T. That's why Booker was there. Remember when I said I was hoping it was Booker's entrance? We're going to see him work or he's back in the Rumble or whatever. No, he was just there as a flunky for Bugs Bunny. I know the song was about Booker T, or the song was titled Booker T, but I didn't know that they would bring this cretin all the way in and fly Booker there to stand there just so he could assault our ear canals with that. It sounded like someone disemboweling a cat with a Black & Decker bandsaw. How
You're out of touch. You're out of touch, old man.
Fuck. Noise sounded the same when I was 15 or 50. And so how has this guy become so hot suddenly when we had never heard of him the week before this goddamn pay-per-view, and then now suddenly he's on everything? And has he done anything that doesn't sound like Booker T, the song, where I could listen to it to get a second opinion? Or does it all sound like that?
I'm not terribly familiar with his body of work, I must admit. So I can't answer that question.
His body of work probably looks like Frank Nitty's floating in the fucking East River.
Well, what do you think about the idea that he's selling more merch than all of the WWE superstars?
Well, it's either a sad indictment on the level of stars that they're not making these days, or a sad indictment on the general music buying population in the country. One or the other. I'm not sure which. I mean, they have no stars, so I can believe that this guy from the music world would suddenly sell more merchandise, but at the same time, having heard his music, I'm very perplexed and bumfuzzled as to how he got to be a star in the music world.
Him being a star in the music industry, a big, big star right now, do you think he gets the same royalty rate on his merchandise that the wrestlers are getting?
I have a feeling if this guy is so big and so important to them and has this following and blah, 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 that this guy also has probably an agent a step ahead of most of the boys and negotiated some favorable terms for him to be involved in all of this. I just got a feeling. I don't know it for a fact, but I know it's true.
Obviously, he's not been on your radar, and you weren't very familiar with him, but...
And I've been sitting up here at the castle in the office with binoculars looking out the windows, and I've never seen this guy.
But we do know that he has a following, that he's now the biggest merch seller they have, and also that he, as you said, I didn't even know this, will be on Saturday Night Live, which is a big national television spot still to this day. The idea, if it is true, that they're going to put him with Damien Priest in a match against Miz and Morrison, do you think that's good for Damien Priest, that they think that he should be involved with this guy who they obviously see as a major star? Is that a good sign for Damien Priest?
Yes, actually it is. It's not a good sign for the match, and if we watch it, I'm sure we probably won't enjoy it, because they must monitor these shows. I love Austin Theory, so they stick him with Johnny Sameface.
Oh, did you hear about what just happened to him?
I didn't hear.
So there was an NXT takeover last night as we are recording that we decided not to review.
Decided, yeah, we looked at the lineup and said, nah.
Several things happened. Apparently, a lot of people loved the Finn Balor-Pete Dunne match, not surprising. Apparently, Adam Cole turned on Kyle O'Reilly. But the other thing that a lot of people sent in, based on recent comments we've made about it happening in AEW...
And went in there and they broke the Undisputed Era up. I love them as a group. They break them up.
Well, the big news, Austin Theory kidnapped by Dexter Lumis.
No. Is this a rib?
It's another kidnapping in professional wrestling.
How many kidnappings does that make in the last 2 weeks in pro wrestling?
Which backstage area do you think is more dangerous, AEW or NXT?
It's a toss-up. But anyway, where I was going with that was, I love Austin Theory. They stick him with Johnny Sameface. I love Damien Priest, so now to watch Damien Priest, I got to watch Bugs Bunny. He killed a wabbit, he killed a wabbit, he killed a wabbit. Now we dead.
What do you think is more intimidating? A wrestler saying in his promo, "I'm a bad boy," or the guy being able to say, "I'm a bad bunny"?
But no, you asked if it was good for Damien Priest. Yes, because I mean the WWE as a corporate entity is not evaluating neither this guy's musical talent nor his potential wrestling ability. They're just saying, hey, a bunch of people like this guy for whatever reason. We're going to sap as much of his fucking heat as we possibly can and get whatever out of it we possibly can. And if they think they're certainly viewing him as a bigger star than any of their wrestlers, obviously now they have the metrics to prove it. So if they think enough of Damien Priest, they want to put him with this guy that they obviously are, thinking more of, and probably correctly, than their own wrestlers. That's a good thing that they have that much confidence in Priest. It won't make the match any fucking good. And Miz and Morrison will do whatever they can to carry the guy. And I'm sure he's athletic. We saw him. He gave a better splash than fucking Snoop Dogg did. Snoop Dogg,
that's a very low bar that you're
Well,
right there.
well, I don't know. If it was a reverse limbo contest, remember Snoop Dogg's face and feet were flat on the ground, but his ass was perpendicular up in the air. It was like a reverse limbo contest. I bet he can beat that, old Bugs. But yeah, it's good for Priest that the company thinks that. But it's sad for wrestling that Bugs Bunny can walk in and be the biggest star.
Well, Jim, it is now time for something that's become a little bit of a regular recurring segment here on the show, where someone sends in a cameo for you.
Okay, you did not tell me about this ahead of time, so I'm being blindsided by this one.
I was going to blindside you here on the show with this. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mark Davis in Leicester, England. Let's play this, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Wow, this is a crazy cameo for the hardcore icon himself, the Sandman. Sending out a cameo to the legend himself, Jim Cornette. Like, wow. Jim, you are such a legend. Mark thinks you're a legend. He loves your podcast with you and Brian, dude. I'm just honored to get paid to send Jim Cornette a cameo. Oh, yeah. And Rebecca, you love Jim too? Well, that's cool. Peace. I'm out.
Well, there it is. The hardcore legend, the Sandman, with a cameo for you, Jim.
Did they ever think this was going to be an industry with people purchasing cameos from other people for me? And Sandman, by the way, he was more coherent there in that than some of the guys are in theirs that have a reputation much cleaner than Sandman's there, but he did get in a belch just before he put me over. Thank you, Sandman. And I'm sure he's got to be a deal there on Cameo. You know that some of these guys jack themselves up, but I bet you he's a straight shooter. He's a working man, a simple bird lawyer. He from Philadelphia. Thank you very much there for that,
That's
Sandman,
right.
and to the purchaser.
That's right, Jim. The Sandman, only $31 on Cameo.
What? Well, get two then. Go to Cameo and get two Sandmans for $62. What the heck?
And I said hardcore legend. It's officially here hardcore icon. So I apologize for getting that wrong.
Icon is a step ahead of legend also.
I guess so. It's all frame of mind, I assume. But let's get...
There are metrics. They have over in Zurich, Switzerland. They have not only the International Fecal Standards Bureau, but also metrics for that as well.
I think my favorite is still Coco Beware, thinking that it was really you buying it. That's still the best one.
He wasn't sure whether it was the same one or not, but he didn't want to commit either way. Okay.
Well, so many of the listeners are now buying you cameos. We've had several on the show. I wonder if the listeners are going to start buying you oil paintings of you with your favorite wrestling stars of the past.
You know, that would be incredible. Me managing the Fabulous Fargos or the Graham Brothers. That would be incredible. You know, you can let your imagination run wild when you have a tremendous service like Paint Your Life. We've had so many of the listeners email in saying they got a family picture or a pet, and you can get virtually Virtually is the word that's coming to my mind. Anything painted by the team of world-class artists at Paint Your Life. You can get a professional hand-painted portrait created from any photo or combination of photos. You choose from a team of world-class artists that they've got on staff. You work with them on the details. You can order a custom-made, hand-painted portrait in less than 5 minutes. You can get it in about 3 weeks. And they can take any picture, whether it's yourself, your kids, family, special place, the beloved pet, or you can combine pictures into one painting if generations were never in the same place at the same time, and get something for somebody's birthday, anniversary, wedding gift, or just for yourself. And you saw, I'm pretty sure that team of world-class artists was responsible for the painting of Callis and Olivier on AEW a few weeks ago, where they actually looked in physical condition. So they can even make you look a little better, I think, if you bribe them. Nevertheless, folks, at paintyourlife.com, there's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded, guaranteed. And right now, as a limited time offer, get 20% off the painting, 20% off the painting, and free shipping. Text the word DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000. That's 64 with 3 zeros. DRIVE to 64,000. Text DRIVE to 64,000 and get the special offer, 20% off and free shipping at paintyourlife.com. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Terms apply. Available at paintyourlife.com/terms.
Well, let's get a few more questions here on the show. This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. There is no name signed to this.
Uh-oh.
But
well, already, here we go.
This kind of feud matches piss. All right, the English may not be. This may be from someone outside of the country. This kind of.
Now there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, but I'm trying to read it and I realize, this kind of feud matches pisses me the hell off. I understand Randy Savage beat Hogan via countout back in the early 1980s, which isn't good enough. Every single time Hogan fought Randy Savage in a match, Hogan gets the 3 count. Why in the blue hell Savage never beat Hogan via pinfall ever? What is this? Don't let me talk about when Randy Savage was WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Savage only has the title 24 hours, and WCW books the match against Savage to get beat by Hogan via pinfall for the title. Jim.
Yes.
Can you please make some wrestling industry common sense of this garbage? How do you feel about Randy Savage always taking the back seat when it comes to Hogan?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I would respond to that question with the following. If a train leaving New York at 60 miles an hour leaves at 4 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday, while a train leaving Los Angeles at 70 miles an hour leaves at 3 o'clock Western time on Wednesday, then how long does it take a grasshopper with a wooden leg to kick all the seeds out of a dill pickle? What the fuck I don't know what he just asked. I don't know what he just said.
Randy Savage never getting pinfall victories over Hogan, but Hogan always...
Well, it joined the club. Who else did? Very few people. It wasn't going to happen when Savage was the heel and Hogan was the babyface. And then when Savage became a babyface, that match was never going to happen because Vince wasn't ever going to do that match. And then when fucking Savage punched Hogan in the fucking eye right before WrestleMania, what was it, 9?
Is that the story you've heard? Everyone always wonders how Hogan got the black eye.
Yeah, that's what Hogan found out Savage found out rather, that Elizabeth had run off to Hogan's house and was staying with Linda because Linda and Elizabeth were friends, and Hogan didn't tell Savage that she was there. Which is why when Savage confronted him with that, he confronted him by punching him in the fucking eye. And that's why Hogan had a black eye at WrestleMania 9.
That's always been a rumor, but I had never heard it confirmed before.
I didn't know that it was a rumor. I thought everybody knew that was the deal.
Well, they do now.
Perhaps I've been mistaken all these years. I thought everybody kind of heard about that by now.
Does that answer the question?
That answers the question. Yeah. That's the whole thing is Vince was not going to have Savage or Orndorff or Piper or anybody beat Hogan 84, 85, 86, 87. And then Savage becomes a babyface. Well, then, as hot as Savage was, Hogan was established. Vince, from the days of his father doing Bruno and Pedro at Shea Stadium, never wanted to do babyface versus babyface matches. That's well known, and thought that it would hurt one or the other. Bruno had pitched to Vince Sr. to do him and Andre, and Vince Sr. said, no, it'll hurt one of you. Why? And that was Vince Jr.'s thought on babyface versus babyface matches for years, until then, the Attitude Era and everything became somewhat meaningless in that regard. But so he wasn't going to do that. And then I would have to think that I don't have a photographic memory of everything they did when they were working together in WCW, but I don't see that was ever going to be a thing, that Hogan was going to fucking drop a fall for Savage at that point in time.
And behind the scenes, they always kind of had a love-hate relationship.
That's one way to put it.
Randy
was intense, but here's the thing.
How many guys did he punch? Hogan, Road Warrior Hawk, didn't they get into a fight backstage?
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't backstage. It was at a concert.
It was at a concert in Japan or something, wasn't it?
No, I don't think it was in Japan. I don't know, but their wives there was heat between their wives. And that was that thing. It wasn't at a wrestling show, but
Bill Dundee.
And that was over wrestling, but Randy was intense. But what I was going to say was, here's a guy, imagine in 1994, imagine Hulk Hogan doing this. Savage is booked in Knoxville for me for the Smoky Mountain show, and I used him against Bruiser Bedlam. I've told the story, but I was ready to do a DQ and let Savage look good and whatever the fuck he wanted to do. And he came to me at night. He said, "Brother, he's your top heel. I'm not coming back. I'll put him over." What? Yep. And there was bells and whistles, and the Funks, the Dory Funk Jr. at least, I don't think Terry was there. Dory Funk Jr. interfered, and I interfered, and the baby faces came out, and there was shit going on, but he did the 1, 2, 3, the job in the middle of the ring, because he was wrestling business. His family had run Knoxville before. He knew it was tough. He was sympathetic to the situation we had going on in the territory, and he was willing to do business. And that was the most professional thing that any star of that magnitude could do when he didn't have to. But imagine, say, if it had been Hogan, right? Because they were at one time the two biggest stars in wrestling. Imagine if it had been Hogan. He wouldn't even have done the match to begin with. He wouldn't have taken the booking. And if he'd have showed up, he would have wanted to leg drop everybody in the fucking territory. So I can't say anything bad about Randy.
Well, to be fair, if you interviewed Hogan about it now, he would say that he was willing to do the job to anyone you wanted him to, because he was just doing business.
Yeah, he'd want to put, he would have said, "Go ahead and dress Mark Curtis up in the Ninja Turtle outfit, and I'll put him over, because it'll be business, brother." And then he would have had some kind of way to figure it out whether he'd come out at the end of it looking better.
All right, well, let's get another question here. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mick Woods in Silgo, Ireland. Hello, Jim. I was a huge fan of the Headbangers during the Attitude Era. They were my favorite tag team. I thought they were great workers and had excellent chemistry. I have two questions in regards to them. One, you mentioned on a recent drive-thru of seeing them in a small promotion prior to their WWF stint. Were they portraying a similar heavy metal rocker gimmick at this time? Or was it something completely different? And question two, I thought both guys were good workers, but Mosh/Chaz always stood out to me. I thought he was excellent in-ring and should have been given more time to wrestle under the subsequent Chaz gimmick, and not that beaver cleavage shit. I'd be interested in knowing whether you thought Mosh or Thrasher were the better worker/star.
Well, it's not fair to say one was better over the other, because neither as a single got a chance you mentioned one of those gimmicks, to really do anything. But how I saw them was, no, they were completely different. I've told this story before, but we got new listeners. Both guys had been wrestling as a tag team for Dennis Coralluzzo up in New Jersey, because both guys are from the Northeast. And they were a masked team called the Spiders. Do you remember, you saw them on some of the spot shows that Dennis ran when you started going, right?
Yeah, and I think actually originally it was just Glenn Ruth as the Spider, and then they became a tag team.
Yes.
Spiders.
Glenn was the first Spider, and then Chaz crawled right up next to him. But anyway, they knew that I had a relationship with Dennis, and I was on some of Dennis's shows, so I could see some of the guys. And obviously that's where I'd found Candido and Tammy, and so they had sent me a tape, and we had talked. You know, they wanted to go to a territory. I think they had tried Memphis for a short period of time. It didn't work out, whatever, but there wasn't really a lot of other territories to work at that point. They spent some time working for Burt Prentice when he had something going out in, God, it was at Missouri or wherever, Kansas. Anyway, I liked them as workers and as people. I just didn't have a spot, and I wasn't crazy about the masked Spiders. And then Cat Collins, my friend who was working for Rick Rubin, he's the one who introduced us. Cat was coming to Knoxville with Glenn Danzig, who was a big wrestling fan. And I think Rubin was either on Deaf American Records, or Rubin was going to do something with his...
No, Rick had produced him. I mean, when Danzig went solo, Rick was his producer, yeah.
Well, there you go.
And he was on Deaf American Records, yeah.
Well, thank you. See, I knew you'd know that. But anyway, Kat said, hey, you want to come to this concert in Knoxville? I'm going to be there. We can hang out, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, I had never really listened to a lot of Glenn Danzig, but, the heavy metal type of stuff, right? But he's a nice guy, a big fan, and the whole 9 yards. That was all great. But the opening act, and it wasn't at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum. This was at a building I'd never been to before or since in Knoxville that they had these concerts in, where they had the mosh pit and the headbanging going on. I was unprepared for this. I was thinking I was going to see a rock concert. I didn't know I was going to see a goddamn legalized riot. Because the opening act is this guy comes out, and he's wearing combat boots and a fucking skirt and this weird makeup, and there's chains and shit and piercings hanging all over him and the people in his band, and everybody in the fucking building looks exactly the same. And he's dead. I can't fucking, I'm not in the crowd. I'm over behind the equipment cases, back behind to the side of the stage, right? Because I said, and I'll go out and piss in the alley instead of going in the bathroom with these people, because holy shit, this is a wild-looking crowd, and I'm used to the wrestling crowds in East Tennessee. But these people were off their shit. And this guy on stage, combat boots and the fucking piercings and the goddamn skirt and the whole 9 yards, at one point he stops what he called singing and says, when I count to 3, I want everybody in the audience to spit on me. 1, 2, 3, and everybody in the audience spits. And of course, past the first 2 rows, everybody's just spitting on the people in front of them. And I'm like, there's a fucking gimmick here somewhere, right? And the guy's name was Marilyn Manson. But we didn't know that at the time, because he was opening for Glenn Danzig. This was 1994 or whatever. So I said, there's a gimmick there. These fucking guys wearing cowboy boots and skirts with piercings and fucking black eye makeup on, and these fucking heavy metal rock and roll fucking thrash metal t-shirts. And I went and bought a couple of magazines. I don't even remember what the titles of them were anymore. But what was that style of music, Brian, at that time? What would it correctly be called?
I'm not exactly sure. What would you call Marilyn Manson? Crap?
Well, I mean, besides crap, I mean, was it heavy metal, or was it death metal, or was it...
It's not death metal.
Thrashing and...
It's kind of... It maybe could be called heavy metal, but...
Okay, well, they had the people in the mosh pit. I'm asking Kat, I'm like, look, there's a beef broken out. They got a big Hey Rube going on. I said, no, they're dancing. I said, they're fucking punching and slamming into each other. That's what they do. But anyway, I said, there's a gimmick. There's a gimmick here. And I got the magazines and I looked, and that's when it hit me, Glenn and Chaz the Spiders, I hate the gimmick. What about if they were the Headbangers, Thrasher and Mosh? And they fucking wear skirts and combat boots and at first they got fake piercings, but then as Chaz especially, I think, went farther with it and had some shit put in. And the black eye makeup and the weird. And so anyway, I called them and I got both of them on the phone together. They were on separate lines. And I said, guys, I've got a spot for you. And they're like, wow, yeah, that's great. I'm like, but you need to wear dresses. And there was the silence like, is he, because this was before this would be a question or a statement that would be made. I guess now it wouldn't be surprising. But they were waiting for me to say, no, I'm just ribbing. I said, I'm not ribbing. I said, but here's the gimmick. And then when I told them the gimmick, and I said, go get the magazines. And they already had some tag team moves, which they did great in Smoky Mountain. It just, a lot of them got fucked up in the WWF because of the fact that the ring was 10 times as hard as my Smoky Mountain ring. And they were using real ropes. So it threw their shit off. But that power bomb combination leg drop off the top, they called it the stage dive. They nailed that every time in Knoxville. It looked great. And they would do the slam dance thing where they'd shoot the guy off and jump up in the air and hit. It was the old ass bump, right? But they got the gimmick and they did the interviews like these crazy slobbering fucking heavy metal fans or whatever. The point is, it was a great gimmick for Knoxville and for a territory. And they were heels because look at them. Most people in East Tennessee didn't want their children to grow up looking like the Headbangers. But then when they went to the WWF, by then it was a couple years later, and all those type of acts were on the top of the charts, and they were more babyface, and they were more smiley, happy babyface shit. But yeah, they both could work. They were both great guys. They made the most out of the gimmick. I'd never dreamed it would go to the WWF. I was doing something to give them a spot in a territory to get them some experience. But then later on in 96, when I was up there, we needed tag teams. The tag team situation was the shits. And of course, with Vince not giving a shit about it, they'd make it worse. They buried Tom Pritchard and Chris Candido as the Body Donnas. But I said, well, what about the Headbangers? Well, what should we call them? I said, what about the Headbangers? Well, we can't use their name and gimmick. I said, it's my name and gimmick. I gave it to them. So if I say it's okay, can you give them a job and use their gimmick? Oh, okay. So I had to, like I did with D'Lo Brown, I had to sign the paper. It's my idea. Only thing is I lied with D'Lo. I told him to come up with a name and he came up with it. But if they'd have known that, they wouldn't let him use it. So I told him I came up with it and signed the fucking paper. But anyway, so that's how they got up there. I always liked them, never had a problem with them. They were fun. They got me one lawsuit in Clarefield, Tennessee, but that's the guy fucking laid hands upon them first. So otherwise I couldn't say anything bad about it.
How does that work with the paperwork you signed? I'm intrigued. Because obviously D'Lo Brown still calls himself D'Lo Brown, and I think the Headbangers still called themselves the Headbangers at various points after WWE.
I don't know whether I even have a copy of it or not, but it was a very short, more like a not even a release, but just like a fucking 2 or 3 line document. I hereby certify that I came up with the intellectual property name and Zabada and give the WWE the right, or F at the time, the right to use this. And I don't know whether they even know or remember that they but really, it only gave them the right to use it during the time that they were under contract anyway, because I couldn't sign the guys, rights away in perpetuity. But besides that, it got them a job, so who gives a shit? What are they going to do now? Ask them for a refund on all the money they've made since then?
Well, Jim, one thing that we've received on the topic of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we received a bunch of questions recently about what I guess is commonly referred to as your nosebleed interview. It's a promo with you and the Heavenly Bodies.
It's actually not even the only one. There's another one on TBS, the studio show on TBS Saturday night, where I actually slung blood enough that it landed on Stan's chest, and he looks down and goes, what the fuck? But go ahead.
Well, we have this promo here, and like I said, we received a lot of questions about it. If it's okay with you, I'd like to play it and then get your thoughts and memories on it on the other side.
Well, let me set it up a little first.
Okay.
Because that way people will understand better. Because I know what you're playing. Because I've been getting asked about this for the past few years. And this clip is on YouTube, and you'll tell them where they can, see it. Because it's video as well, obviously. So you can tell them where they can see it in a minute. But every time that somebody goes around of, seeing this video, I get emails, or I've been questioned on Twitter. Holy shit, either why did your nose start bleeding? Were you on cocaine? I'm sure that's probably what some of the boys thought. Why didn't you redo it? Wow, that was just, registering that it was a good promo. This was a pre-tape on one of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling television programs. And we were just a couple of weeks away from Thanksgiving Thunder 1992, the first year that we had been in business and done the Thanksgiving weekend shows. And we had 4 set up: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Thanksgiving weekend in 4 different towns. They were going to be our big cards. And the main events were for the Smoky Mountain Tag Team title. The Heavenly Bodies would face the Rock and Roll Express after our initial angle had been running there for a few months in 4 different stipulation matches for the tag team title on 4 successive nights. And instead of trying to hide that we were going to wrestle him 4 nights in a row in a small territory like that, and so we could get the maximum promotion out of television, we went the other way and told everybody, yeah, this is something that, it's a marathon type of thing where these teams are going to have to go through 4 of the most dangerous matches in wrestling, 4 nights in a row at Thanksgiving Thunder, tag team title on the line every night in every match. And as it would turn out, we switched the belts every night. And people are going to say, oh, I thought when you said you switched the titles too much, it's meaningless. Well, no, when you build up something like this as the cataclysmic occurrence and then it pays off, it makes sense. Then we didn't switch the belts for another few months or whatever the fuck. But each night, the team that won them the night before would drop them back and their stipulations would backfire or whatever. And this promo was not even live in front of the people. A Smoky Mountain television taping, we'd all get there. Well, I would get there along with the technical crew at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and they'd be setting up in the ring and etc. And then the announcers would get there and we'd have a production meeting about 3:00. And then by 4:30, we'd be done with that. And then we'd do pre-tapes for an hour and a half or so. And by then you'd have to let the people in, and none of the boys could go out in the building because the people were in the building. So we'd be jammed up in the locker rooms, and there's where we would do, the rest of the laying out of the television program. So it was a tight day to begin with. And I was doing everything from writing the show to then coming and making sure that the production was set up and then hosting the production meeting and then appearing at a bunch of the pre-taped interviews and then laying out everything for the guys live. And appearing on each one of the television programs in at least one segment, possibly more. So there wasn't a lot of time to sit around. And we only had one pre-tape camera. So anyway, it's a down and dirty with Dutch Mantell segment, because Dutch was doing color at the time on the show. He would interview the talent in the middle interview section each week, sometimes live in the ring, sometimes a pre-tape. This was a pre-tape that I had allotted 4 minutes for, and that I was going to sell all those matches over Thanksgiving Thunder weekend, plus the idea that I was being forced to wrestle on TV that night by Bob Armstrong because it was obviously a plot to try to weaken me, etc., etc. So I had a lot to cover. The 4 minutes turns out to be about 6 minutes. But at about 4.5 minutes in, where I start getting cranked up, I realize on the inside, my nose is about to bleed. Because I'm fucking sweating. I'm in the basement of a fucking high school gym and somewhere in Eastern Virginia, and the heat's on and it's hot, and I'm worked up and I'm sweating, and now I can tell it's running down the back of my throat. My nose is going to bleed. So what I kind of did, without letting it stop me or throw me off, I sniffed a few times, and I was hoping I could get by with it. But over the last 20 seconds or so, it actually starts running down my face and you can see it. Now, you might think you see it beforehand because what's on YouTube is a 4th generation VHS. And so the mole on my upper lip looks like a giant goddamn glob. But it actually is blood the last 20 or 30 seconds. I think somebody said, my God, he had an aneurysm doing this promo. But the reason why I didn't stop and redo it is going to be fairly obvious when you listen to this promo. We didn't have the time, and if we did have the time, I wasn't going to go back and try to do this again. So I just fucking went with it. And by the end of the thing, when I'm standing there, breathing heavy, sweating, and there's blood running down my face, you kind of got the idea from that whole visual that I was serious. So we left it. And that was the story leading up to the promo and what happened. Let's play it and see if you have any questions on the other side, Brian.
Let's play it, and on the screen, Memorial Gym, Hazard, Thursday, November 26, 7:30 p.m. Kids under 12, only 57 cents.
That's because we were on WYMT, your Mountain Television 57. So everybody in the hills had 5 kids. If we got them to bring 5 kids for 57 cents apiece, then 2 adults paid full price.
Well, here it is from Smoky Mountain Wrestling Television.
And by the way, we did end up with almost 2,000 people, as I recall, that night in Hazard, Kentucky. Go ahead.
From Smoky Mountain Wrestling Television, November 21st, 1992.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Down and Dirty with Dutch. I'm Dutch Mantell, and you're not. I am back here today on this special segment in the dressing room area. I want to get Jim Cornette's comments on the upcoming match today between the Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette will be in the ring today against the Rock and Roll Express and Ronnie Garvin. Now, Jimmy, I know you're not in a very happy mood. We'd just like to get some of your comments for the fans at home.
Oh, I got comments, all right. I got comments. This is a con job. Pure and simple is exactly what it is. Everybody out there knows I don't belong in a professional wrestling ring. I'm not an athlete. I shouldn't be forced to wrestle. Sure, the Heavenly Bodies, they can take care of themselves, but now they got to worry about taking care of me, too, and it's all a con job. It's so crystal clear. Because first the Rock and Roll Express comes up with this 4 Faces of Fear challenge at Thanksgiving Thunder. The 4 most dangerous kind of matches in wrestling, 4 days in a row, never been done, and now they're trying to chicken out of it. Now they got to have some kind of advantage. So they go to Bob Armstrong and say they make up this dream match. Yeah, dream match, right. Yeah, people writing in, signing matches, booking matches. What it actually boils down to is they needed an advantage. They knew if they got me in the ring, then they'd have that advantage. So they dreamed up this con, and then Bob Armstrong said, well, it's a conflict of interest for me to wrestle. I'm the commissioner. I'll sign Ronnie Garvin, a psychopathic, homicidal, maniac, serial killer that would just as soon inflict pain on somebody as look at him. Right. I'll tell you what a conflict of interest is, Bob Armstrong. A conflict of interest is you dragging your old geriatric 184-year-old retirement home, Geritol for lunch bunch, back in there and getting it broken. Yeah. That's what conflict of interest is. But let me tell you something. That's okay. Hey, that's okay, Dutch. I'm going to stand up. That's okay. Because you see, we're going to be all right. Because you see, Rock and Roll Express, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do something. You ain't going to get your hands on me. They think that if they put me out of commission, if I'm not there at ringside at Thanksgiving Thunder to lead my men on to victory, then they're going to have an advantage. If I'm not there to provide moral support, they're going to have an advantage. Well, they would, but I'm going to be there. But Rock and Roll, I'll tell you who's got an advantage. We do, brother. Robert Gibson, that hand ain't 100%. I know it. They know it. And you know it. Ricky Morton, maybe something might happen to you before Thanksgiving Thunder comes around that indicates that you're not 100% either. I don't know what that might be, but we'll think of something. The 4 most dangerous kind of matches in professional wrestling 4 days in a row. The 4 Faces of Fear, and I can assure you, Rock and Roll Express, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know where it's going to happen. I don't know exactly what point, but I do know it's going to happen. You're going to look at the face of fear. And you're going to look at it just like it's staring back from a mirror. You're going to see what that looks like, brother. Because there's one thing that's certain above all else. Nobody, but nobody, can go through 4 matches like this 4 days in a row without getting hurt. So at some point, somebody's going to get hurt real bad. And we plan on it being you. That's why we've accepted the risk. Either we get rid of you or you get rid of us, but one way or another it's going to be settled. Hazard, Kentucky, Thanksgiving night, November 26th. Falls count anywhere. You know what that means? That means it's not only legal to wrestle inside the ring, but outside the ring as well. You can go anywhere you want to go. In the lobby, the parking lot, the aisleway, concession stand, women's toilet. Makes no difference. When somebody's back hits a flat surface and he gets counted down for 3, that's when the match is over with. Then Friday night, November 27th, Welch, West Virginia. Texas death match. Pure and simple, the rules are this. Falls don't count. When a guy gets pinned, Then he's got a 30-second rest period, and then the bell rings for the next fall. Could go 4 falls or 40. Guy's got a 10 count to make it to his feet and answer the bell. And brother, if he don't answer the bell, that means he can't continue. And that means he's been beat so bad that he can't get up. And the match goes until one man can't continue, because in a Texas death match, there's no time limit, no disqualification, no stopping the match. Then Freedom Hall, Johnson City, Saturday night, November 28th, our personal favorite, Smoky Mountain Street Fight. That's not even a wrestling match. You don't even get dressed to wrestle. You wear your street clothes, you wear your boots, your big belts, your big leather belts with the big belt buckles. You wear everything, you stick everything in your pockets you can stick in, and anything you can drag to the ring, brother, it's legal to use, because that's exactly what it is, a street fight. Ask the Fantastics how bad the Heavenly Bodies are in a street fight, brother, and you'll find out. That's in Johnson City. And then to top it all off, save the best for last, Knoxville, Tennessee, November 29th, Sunday afternoon. A barbed wire cage match. The ring entirely surrounded by a cage made out of 4-pronged barbed wire. When you get inside that thing, brother, and that door closes, there's no way for anybody else to get in or for you to get out unless you want to look like a stack of presidential memos the night before the Watergate trial. 4-pronged barbed wire, brother. And that's what's going to come down to. So at one point, Rock and Roll Express, you're going to look at the face of fear. And then you're going to look at the referee. Because when the Heavenly Bodies are on top of you, beating your stinking brains out, when maybe your teeth are lolling around in your mouth like chiclets, and you got a broken bone or your head's busted open, you're going to look at that referee and you're going to say, please, referee, please stop the match. Please pull him off of us. Please don't let this carnage go on any longer. And that referee's going to look at you, Rock and Roll, and he's going to say, I can't stop the match. I don't have the authority because you asked for it to be that way. And so then you're going to turn, you're going to look at me. And you're going to say, Jim Cornette, that blood's going to be running down your face mixing with those tears. Jim Cornette, please stop the match. Please call him off of us. Please, we can't take the torture anymore. And I'm going to look at you, Rock and Roll, and I'm going to say, I can't call him off of you. I can't stop it because you asked for it to be that way. You were stupid enough, and I don't feel sorry for stupid people. And then when we're standing there with our hands in the air, brother, and that championship belt across our shoulders, and all those genetic defects are booing us, but recognize this as the greatest tag team of all time, and you're laying there face down in a pool of your own blood, beaten, broken, and disgusted. Rock and Roll Express, you will realize that you have seen the face of fear, and it was the Heavenly Bodies. Thanksgiving Thunder, 4 Faces of Fear, Rock and Roll Express, your future is looking very, very dim.
Okay, fans, that's it. I thought Jimmy Cornette was worried, but he's got his confidence back. Stay tuned. The big 6-man tag on its way.
Dutch with the great wrap up there. Okay, he's got his confidence back. He's losing blood as we speak. That's why I didn't want to do that over again. Do you blame me?
That is a fantastic interview. Fantastic.
Well, but here's the thing, I'm not trying to fillet myself on the air. But for the folks who want to, the aspiring young wrestlers, I don't know how a writer would have written that, or how anybody would memorize it if they did. But the basic components, I'm doing a heel interview, so I'm trying to be as abrasive and obnoxious as possible through the whole thing. But we gave a halfway legitimate explanation for why I'm upset about that night's television match, a halfway legitimate explanation for how these matches were booked, and then we gave the stipulations, the dates and places, so the people would make sure that they can mark down on their calendar when to attend and buy a ticket, and what we plan to do to the baby faces that they were going to have to overcome and stop us from doing. That's hyping a fight. That's selling tickets. That's cutting a promo for a match. The story that we had going, obviously, was referred to in a number of things that I said that if you're just listening to that in a vacuum, you don't know why Robert Gibson's hand was injured. You don't know why Bullet Bob Armstrong said something was a conflict. But we didn't beat them to death with a written, recited version of the events thus far in our story. We referred to them. I referred to them. The announcers have been reinforcing them, and the people are living it in the moment. So instead, you concentrate on building the match, the confrontation, the final conflict, which we even used that before sometimes, the final conflict for a match, and get the people interested and want to see it. Who's going to win? How can the baby faces overcome this? What's going to happen? Are we going to get rid of these fucking Heavenly Bodies and that loudmouth Jim Cornette, or will the Rock and Roll Express come out as the tag team champions, or will they be run off? What the fuck? Create people asking questions over who's going to win and what's going to happen, and just hype it. And you've got to sound like you fucking mean it. And also, if you start bleeding, don't do it over again, because it ends up making it more memorable. That's the moral to that story.
Where'd you get the All Japan jacket?
Bobby Fulton.
Oh, makes sense.
Bobby Fulton twice, and I was so mad. The first time when the Fantastics were going to Japan, and I guess it was in '86. We weren't in the territory at the time, but I said, get me one of those Capital Sportswear warm-up suits, right, that all the boys wear. So he did, and I'd given him measurements, and the pants came out a little short. They were always a little short, looked a little odd. So the next time he went, when '88, when we were working together in Charlotte for Crockett, I said, I said, get me another fucking warm-up outfit and blah, blah, blah. And he got me, and it fit just perfectly. And I'll be a son of a bitch. I still have the one that don't fit, but God damn it, I accidentally left the jacket to the one that fit perfectly, that would still fit me today now, in a locker room somewhere a few years later, and didn't realize it till I was gone and never went back.
Oh my God, that's awful.
But yeah, those Capital Sportswear warm-up suits were the rage amongst the guys in the 80s and 90s. Oh, and let me tell you this one real quick. The first one that I got had on the back of the jacket, where the guys would have their names or whatever, had Midnight Express written in Japanese. So it was Japanese writing. Nobody knew what it was. And I'm in Charlotte at Kabuta, the Japanese steakhouse, sitting and eating one night, and I'm wearing that jacket. And at the other end of the hibachi grill is this group of actual Japanese businessmen. And when I got up to went and take a fucking piss or whatever, they saw the back of my jacket, and when I sat down, they say, Midnight Express? What Midnight? I said, wrestling. And they all started doing the Baba Chop. Oh, Baba, and they're doing Baba Chops to each other. They don't know wrestling from Tom's House Cat as far as anything that's going on. They're Japanese businessmen, but everybody in Japan knew Baba, and they would do the Baba Chop with each other.
On TBS, when you did a promo, typically you would have either Dennis or Bobby or Stan and Bobby, one on each side of you. And sometimes they were serious. If it was more of a interview with some humor in it, maybe they would laugh, but usually just standing there while you do the talking. Here for this promo, Stan is very serious on one side of you. And on the other side, or behind you slightly, Tom Pritchard is nonstop moving and running his hands in his hair and talking to himself, it seems.
Well, no, he's not talking to himself. He's like, that's right, you tell him. But just he background fill stuff.
Was it distracting at all?
No. Goddamn, if you can't cut a fucking promo when people are talking around you, then you need to stay out of the wrestling business. We used to cut promos with 5,000 people in a fucking arena. No, he's back there. He's doing he's like, that's right, you tell him. And Stan's concerned up at front. But whether it was the Midnight and at the podium in Atlanta, or the Bodies or whatever, or the Yokozuna or the Bulldog and Owen, they all have to be themselves, and they can't just stand there. Well, Yoko's thing partly was just standing there with the evil face and then doing Banzai at the end. But mostly you wanted the guys to be out there and be animated and be emoting. Even if they can't speak, they're involved in it. It's not just they're ever just standing there bored. So no, that didn't throw me off, because you wanted shit like that. Every once in a while when something would happen I wouldn't expect. I think Murdoch used to throw me off every once in a while, because he did something one time with the goddamn he had a job guy on Atlanta TV, and he threw the job guy through the podium and broke the podium. And then we came back later on, and he still had pieces of the podium, and he was cutting his promo, and fucking his breath was awful, and we started making over it just on the spot. Like, ooh, watch that breath, Dickie. And we'd make shit up. And which is which is why it looked kind of like we meant it and natural, because we were actually making the shit up as we went along. We hadn't, especially you didn't rehearse with Murdoch, but no, it made it to me more visually appealing when all the guys were into doing what they variously did. And it wasn't as like, remember the Don Fargo and fucking who was his partner, the Chain Gang, but was it Frank? It was Frank Dillinger at the time.
Yeah, then it was Ken Dillinger later.
But they would goddamn just talk over the top of each other and nonstop and be talking and yelling and moving. But it was like, what the fuck? That was a little distracting, but it helped that the guys were not just being mute and standing there doing nothing. It was like they were, whoever I was talking for didn't get a lot of words in, but they still got a lot of camera time, and they got to look cocky and above it all while I did the talking for them. Fun times.
Well, real quick before I finish this with a question, here's a sample of the Chain Gang talking, since you just brought it up.
You've just got it on fucking speed dial there.
The Chain Gang, of course, at this time, he wasn't Don Fargo. It was Jack and Frank Dillinger. And here's them talking about a match with Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher.
We heard that we look pretty bad. No, sir. You should see the men that we wrestled, the Crusher and the Bruiser. You should see them. Listen, we're used to looking like this.
So bad,
this don't bother us at all. They're finished and they're done. In fact, we would like to have another match with them, right? We're not afraid of them.
Because we
heard
lose,
the comment made.
As far as we're concerned, as far as all righteous people are concerned,
four toughies the way we can within 7 or 8 days. You know what we do?
Now we're heading for...
We fight 24 hours a day, not only in the ring, everywhere we go.
We fought all our lives.
Stops us.
Nobody stops us.
We are
getting kicked in the head,
because we know how to do it.
Till we got to where we can do it.
Winners.
And now we do it.
Why are we winners?
That's what we
because we're the greatest cheaters there are. There's only one way to get ahead in this business.
Why are we winners?
Because we are cheating. And that's the only way to get ahead is to cheat. Now, we got this so-called, what's our main laughter? I can't think of his name right off the head.
Snyder. And
there is a big round joke.
Pat O'Connor.
Ex-champions. That's another big... These guys don't have a chance against us. How can they possibly think they can stop an iron horse like us? Because we have
We've got the momentum behind us, right?
We've got the momentum. And so we step up for 2 more.
It's just like a big bulldozer.
No way in the world
rolling over like one
of
those other big things. You know, what do you call them? You know.
Crane?
No,
the tank.
You're welcome.
That's what's going to happen to them.
You're welcome. They're going to be dead.
And that's
going to be run over.
But before we finish up our fight interview, I want to say one thing.
Go ahead, say a word or two.
I want to mention one word.
Yeah, mention what word?
Wilbur Snyder. That is the biggest joke. We destroyed him right there in the town of Hammond.
Right,
and he wants to come back
to the hospital.
He's
back. Is he off his crutches
yet? You can't hurt us.
He's off his crutches, I guess, and he's ready for it again.
Nobody can stop it.
Well, there it is, the Chain Gang. No one does a promo like that. It's incredible.
And you know, those guys, 24 hours a day, Fargo lived every gimmick. They would ride up to the town on their motorcycles. The people would see them. They would come into the ring in the same clothes they'd showed up to the building in. They'd work the jeans and the jean jackets and everything. They'd fucking leave on the motorcycle. Whatever they did in between, you never had any idea. And off they go again the next day. And you believed them. And plus, looking at them, that's when Fargo was when he first got into business, he was a competitive bodybuilder. And then he got heavy and stocky. But then in 75, when he was almost 50, he fucking trimmed down to like 180 something. It was bodybuilding shape again with abs. And then the year after that was 300 pounds. But with that scarred up face. And then Dillinger was fucking just a huge, immense guy. He made Moondog Mayne look fucking small and retiring.
And he's the guy who had to stop because remember the Hells Angels got mad at them. And, I mean, you probably know the story better than I do, but that was the end of Jack Dillinger in wrestling, the Hells Angels.
Well, but no, Frank
Or Frank Dillinger, excuse me.
Because Don was Jack. And then, so Don got then Jim after that. But the Frank Dillinger story was they were working as the Hells Angels, not the Chain Gang. And because some places wanted the Chain Gang and some places let you do the Hells Angels. And apparently some real Hells Angels came to the matches and invited them out. Oh, we love you guys. We love what you're doing. And invited them to their clubhouse for a party that night, which when they showed up, found out the party was going to be that they weren't happy that their names were being bandied around, the Hells Angels, and some bad shit was going to take place. And Fargo claimed that he dove out the window and was able to get away, but they I think it was with a shotgun. They shot Frank Dillinger in the leg. And did he just lose the use of it, or did he have to have it cut off?
I've heard both stories, so I don't know.
But regardless, he never wrestled again afterwards, and they started being the Chain Gang instead of Hell's Angels. But yeah, Fargo said, I heard him say, he said to me with his own lips, I dove out the window. I don't know what the fuck happened.
So one final question about your promo. When you hear something like that, do you just think, oh, that was a pretty good promo, just another promo that I did? Or is it special to you? Do you think that's a great promo? I did a great job there.
No, I was cringing because I got the stipulations crossed and sold the matches and didn't blow the fucking take, so we had to do it again. But I said brother a million times. So that would be if I was critiquing that for somebody else, I'd say, all right, you used a lot of words, but brother was too many. But that's kind of like when I'm flowing that fast because there was a lot of shit and I knew I'd only written 4 minutes for it, and I knew I wasn't going to make it, but I didn't want to take up too much time, and that's a good transition word just instead of a pause or a comma. But yeah, I cringe when I hear a lot of that stuff sometimes.
Well, you know, brother, there's a lot of wrestlers who are squeamish when it comes to blood, and you're lucky that Dutch Mantell wasn't, because potentially he could have sued you.
For a blood-borne disease, I could have been sued. I could have been hauled into court. I could have been tarred and feathered and run out of town. But instead, I was not. And you know why? Because on the horizon, a man was entering puberty at that time that would go on to become the greatest legal mind of our time. And the people knew that 25 years from now, Jim Cornette will be represented by that great legal mind, and we can't fuck with him, or elsewise that guy will come and make us wish we had never been born. He will make us curse our mothers for the day that they gave birth to us if we mess with Jim Cornette, because he is represented by this man.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
Yes, even though he was merely a small child, just a pubescent male at the time, the legend of Stephen P. New was growing, and now, well, you know, it's growing until it just can't grow no more. But he will also, as we have come to find out, we've been mentioning this, Stephen P. New will be a guest we have heard on this coming weekend's Jim Cornette Experience, talking about the legal situation between Joey Ryan and some of the people that he has been suing for telling their stories. Stephen will give us some feedback on that on this weekend's Jim Cornette Experience. But of course, he can give you feedback if you've been harmed or damaged or compromised or in other ways fucked with by greedy, evil corporations, people with malevolence and malfeasance in their hearts and minds. Stephen P. New can be your legal champion at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. We've mentioned that the deadlines are running close now for some of these suits that he's been filing on behalf of people that were victimized in some way, given cancer by Roundup or cancer by the talcum powder or cancer A lot of cancer being spread around by these people. In Minden, West Virginia, that the whole town was poisoned by a mining company that left dangerous, hazardous chemicals in the ground. He's helped people in nursing homes, the victims of elder abuse and mistreatment. He can help you too. NewLawOffice.com, 888-692-8084. And he will be with us on the experience this coming weekend to shed further light on how he's trying to help some of the lesser lights in wrestling that are being persecuted by someone for mentioning the truth. And Stephen P. New is a crusader for the truth. Whereas some people wouldn't know the truth if it jumped up and bit them on the dick. Oh, I'm sorry, that would be a horrible visual, jumping up or biting or having anyone else grab your phallus.
Especially when talking about Joey Ryan, yes.
Yes, especially would it be against your will, and you're doing it only because you feel the need to further your career.
Well, like you said, more about that on the next experience. But Jim, before we wrap things up, let's get a question or two. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Christopher Albright in Altus, Oklahoma. Hello to the Boss Hog and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane of the podcasting world.
I'm not sure that's complimentary for either one of us, Roscoe.
Recently on Facebook, Bobby Eaton's wife shared a video of Andre the Giant and Bobby in a 6-man match.
Oh, yeah.
Bobby's wife said that Bobby was Andre's driver in the Tennessee Territory. Does Jim know of this? And did Bobby ever tell Jim any good road stories about driving Andre the Giant around?
Well, no, and first of all, that match, a lot of people saw the clip on Twitter. It was a 6-man tag. It was when Bobby was a member of the First Family of Jimmy Hart. So it was Lawler, Andre, and Coco Ware, I believe, against Bobby Eaton. Oh, my God. Anyway, the clip was of Bobby mostly interacting with Andre, and nobody had seen that before because it didn't really happen that often. That match was in Memphis. I was there that night. They had one in Lexington, Kentucky, about the same time period. This was in 83, when Andre was still free to travel and make territory shots, which came to a close in 84 when Vince Jr. took over fully and started his expansion. So anyway, yeah, I was there that night to watch that match in Memphis, and Andre loved working with guys like Bobby because, you know, they made him look even more spectacular than he did already, and Bobby'd take the bumps and all that stuff. Although, you see, you can tell Bobby's calling backdrop, right? Andre shoots Bobby off, and he bends over, and Bobby's going to take a backdrop from Andre. Well, Andre backdropped him like he did most of the guys that he worked with, which was he just kind of halfway stand up and let the guy kind of take his own bump off his back. He didn't realize that Bobby was taking bigger backdrops than that from normal size guys. And that he was wanting a push off. He was going for the record, right? So it was kind of like a letdown on the backdrop from what you would think. But Bobby he was just a greyhound in those days. And where the driver part comes in, that was working for Nick. At the time in Memphis, when Bobby was working there, he was against Andre because Bobby was a heel working for the First Family. But when Andre would come in to the Nashville end of the territory in the late 70s and working for Nick Goulas, Bobby was a babyface. A lot of time either teamed up with George Goulas, the Jet Set, or whatever. So Bobby was, you know, one of a few guys that the promoter would trust enough to, okay, you're going to pick up the Giant and take him to so-and-so, or pick up the Giant and take him to so-and-so, because Andre didn't just come in the goddamn territory and rent a car and go about his own business. You catered to that guy. You made sure he was picked up and he was with the boys and he was taken to the right place and there for the show and everything. So the only reason I'm not surprised that Nick had Bobby do that, and it wasn't like this was a months-long job. You know, Andre would come into territory, especially in the Knicks, for like 3 or 4 shots or whatever. But I'm surprised that Nick would let Bobby carry Andre around, not because he wasn't responsible enough, but just Bobby always had the worst fucking cars in the world, especially because the way that Nick paid everybody. his first couple years in the business, when he was still one of the Brown Bombers and working under the mask with his partner Orville Hutto, and then really just breaking in as a young babyface, Bobby was making car payments on 2 different used cars, and neither one of them ran, so he was riding a Greyhound bus to the matches. And then finally, he had the USS Alabama, God, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, until finally we ran it to the ground in Louisiana and in Texas. But the USS Alabama was like a 1976 Lincoln Continental, piss yellow. And those things were so big you had to pay 2 parking meters back then. So, but he would get them used because, he wasn't making enough money to afford a brand new Lincoln Continental, but he'd get them like 4 years old or 5 years old with 100,000 miles on them and then run them to fucking death. And at least you could get Andre in a Lincoln Continental. You just couldn't guarantee sometimes the Lincoln Continental was going to make it to the matches. At one point, Bobby'd have to stop every 100 miles to check his gas and put some oil in, rather than the other way around. Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant. All right, well, let's get one final question, our final one this week, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jim Tullett in Seaford, England. I've been a long-time listener of the show. It helps keep me sane during these difficult times, so thank you. My question is, what are your thoughts on Tommy Dreamer's comments during an Impact media call where he claimed he was supposed to have a 2 to 3 month main event program with Triple H in 2002, but it never happened due to, quote, backstage BS. He said, quote, again, they brought Shawn Michaels back with that horrible haircut and those horrible brown tights to replace me.
What?
I guess Tommy Dreamer is saying that instead of doing a 2 to 3 month program with Triple H versus Tommy Dreamer, they instead decided to do Triple H versus the returning Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, I think Tommy's pissing up somebody's leg and tell him it's raining. There. I would have to hear the tone and the verbiage and the context, but I have a feeling Tommy was having fun with whoever was interviewing him, because this is not in any way attempting to denigrate Tommy Dreamer's place in the wrestling business, but I have never heard of him being pitched for or considered for or screwed out of a 2 or 3 month program working with Helmsley in what would that have been, 2002, 3 when Michaels came back?
He said 2002. That's what it says. Okay. I mean, that's what it says here in the email, at least.
That or maybe was somebody pissing up his leg and telling him it was raining. And they'd sold him on the idea he was going to work with Helmsley. Oh, shit, Michaels is coming back. We're going to use him instead. Maybe he believed that. I just don't know that I can make the case that it would actually have been a thing at that particular time in that particular place, that he would have been going to work for several months with Triple H and then Michaels took his place in doing that.
I don't think that was a main event program people would have cared about. Triple H versus Tommy Dreamer.
I'm not even making that assessment. I like Tommy Dreamer. I'm just saying I don't think that was...
That's fine.
I'm just saying I don't think that was a program that anybody would have actually pitched to Vince McMahon unless they wanted to fucking get thrown in his pool.
Unless all the other wrestlers were kidnapped. And no one could find them.
We got a problem. We can't find any of the boys. They've all been kidnapped. Dreamer's here. Oh, okay. All right then, pal. You think we can get any of them back? Can you pay some of the ransom? How about Dreamer's here? Okay, pal. You sure we can't pay the ransom on Triple H? And no, but Dreamer's here. Okay.
Listen, you didn't get that main event program we promised to Triple H, but don't worry, we're going to book you with Tajiri on TV. He wasn't getting a main event program with Triple H. I'm sorry.
I'm not seeing that there was a time or a place that would have been a thing there. Close it up there, Brian.
The drive-thru is closed. We'll be back next Tuesday. Are we going to review this Elimination Chamber?
Oh, I guess we have to. I guess we do. Hold on. And we're also gonna see the Young Rock debut this week, right?
That's right. Well, or Rocky Maivia, as he is known.
Well, he wasn't known as that yet. He was just young Well, he wasn't known as Rocky. He was known as Dewey. Hey, Dewey. But he's got a TV show now called Young Rock. We're going to look at that, too.
We will be looking at that, too. Of course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this Saturday, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Lots of great talk on there, plus Stephen P. New, the Jim Cornette Experience.
Lots of great stuff on there, plus Stephen P. New.
Well, no, we'll have great wrestling
doesn't
talk.
Qualify in the column of great stuff.
Plus a special guest. You would add a special guest, plus a very special guest.
Yes,
very special
guest
episode.
star.
That's right. Well, you can hear classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get access to the archive, classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience, more added each and every Sunday night. Patreon.com/Cornette. Subscribe to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel and get full episodes, clips of episodes, and omnibus collections, all with the incredibly popular Travis Heckel artwork. Subscribe today, as almost 200,000 have, as we are about to pass 200,000 on our march to 1 million.
That artwork is so wonderful, it's almost impossible to articulate it.
The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Brian Last. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget, Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com wants to be forgotten until March. And then there'll be all sorts of stuff for you to spend your hard-earned dollars on. jimcornette.com. The Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Saturday on The Experience and Tuesday right back here on the Drive-Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!